Here we have the overview, and the different tips, ways, methods, approaches that you can use to learn Danish faster. But this is not a list like you have to do all of them. You can choose the one that suits you or the ones, right? Because it depends on how much time you have, your level, your personality type, like how serious you are. So there's a lot of different factors you have to decide on your own. But yeah, let's look at the first one. The first one is, well, it's kind of obvious. Watch Danish videos every day, because this is a Danish channel. And also because you want to be exposed to Danish. Like, you want to hear and read something in Danish every day. So it's not like, okay, once or twice a week I sit down and I watch some videos. It's like, no, ideally you want to do it daily, because then Danish never really leaves your mind. Like, it's always there. Like, it's always somewhere in your memory. You got the phrases and the sounds. It's sort of floating there. You might dream about it, right? So that's really, really good stuff. Now you can watch different kind of videos. The first one is educational videos. So this is like my videos, for example. Like, there are also a few other channels, but I realized that the selection is very small. So, but whatever you can find, something that's educational, you can get the basic vocabulary, some grammar, some pronunciation tips, like, all these things. They're like made for learning. So that is obviously good, but it doesn't have to be that always. Could also be something made for Danish people. Right? Could be some movies or TV show or vlogs. So it could be different things. The good thing about something being educational is that it's easier for you to use and to learn from, because it's sort of tailored to your needs. But the good thing about something that's not made for education, not made for learning, is that it's more natural. Like, even in my videos, when I'm like, oh, this is like a natural speed, it never becomes truly natural, because it's made for education, right? So sometimes, especially when you get to a higher level, you want to like watch a movie, a Danish movie, or a TV show, or a vlog. Like, maybe there's a vlogger, a video blogger, you could also call it that, in Danish, and you think that he or she is making some cool stuff. So you watch that. You don't get all of it, you don't understand every single word, but you get like most of it. So that is something beautiful, and you can really learn a lot that way, right? So make use of all of it, not just one. Movies are great because they have a story, so you're actually invested in it. I know that sometimes these educational videos, we try to make them interesting, but due to the format being relatively short, we cannot make them like as engaging as an actual movie. So watch some movies. It can be comedy or horror or action, whatever you're into, right? Watch Danish videos every day. The second one is take notes. While you're watching videos, it's always a good idea to be taking notes, because sure, you can just chill, you can like put it on and not work so much, so to speak, but you might forget it, right? It's like, oh, that's a cool word, that's a good explanation, but then if you don't write it down, you're just like in one ear and out the other, right? So I would say that when you're watching something or seeing something, you want to like write down the new words. See something that's new and then you write it down, right? Maybe it's a word, or maybe it's a sentence structure, like the grammar, the way the verb is placed, or there's a certain conjunction or preposition, so it's new to you, so you write it down. And then of course, if you're really good, then you ask a teacher. If you don't have a teacher, then ask a friend or boyfriend or girlfriend, husband, or whatever you have, right? Ask a native speaker, because that can help to give some context. So new words and new sentence structures, Other times what you want to do is like write down words that are similar, like, because we all know it was like tror, synes, ved, kender, laver, gør, all these kind of words, saying words that are similar. Sometimes you don't get it. You don't get it just by having it explained to you. You need to see a lot of examples. So if you write down examples from educational videos or Danish movies or TV shows, you have them like right next to each other. So you can see from the context how tror is different from synes and why ved is not the same as kender. Right? These are just some examples. So you can see it in context, and that is the beauty. Because when you have something isolated, it makes it hard to understand the deeper meaning. Right? But in a context, it's easier. It is easier, definitely. It also feels more organic, because that's how it is in real life. Like, people speak like that. So you definitely want to do that. And also, when you are watching videos, you want to pay attention to the spelling. Like, is this a silent G or silent D? Or what is the actual spelling of this word? Oh, I didn't know that, but thanks, let me write it down. So you want to pay attention to that. Like, maybe you're watching something on, I don't know, Netflix or whatever, and it's not actually Danish, but it has Danish subtitles. So, you can write down the translation, or just, oh, there's that word I was looking for, and then you write it down, and you get the spelling right. A lot of language learning is actually just copying and imitating. Some teachers will say that you have to get very deep into the grammar and become an expert in all the rules and stuff. I don't believe in that so much. Grammar is good. Like, grammar helps you make sense of stuff. But really the essence here is you copy. You copy what you see. Right? So yeah, you want to pay attention to the spelling. You see new words, new sentence structures, you see similar words, and then you remember to pay attention to the spelling as well. The third one is translate text into Danish. Now, this one is mostly for beginners, maybe intermediate learners. At a higher level, you don't want to be doing this too much. You want to be making your own sentences. But it's still good. Like, there's a lot of practice here. There's a lot you can learn. So, like, let's say you have something, you wrote a story in your own language and you want to translate it into Danish. Or you have something in Danish you want to translate into your language, or English, whatever it is. It helps because it just sort of cements it in your brain, in your mind. Like, oh yeah, what is that word? How does it correspond to something in the language that I already know? So of course it's good to translate stuff. Now I do have to say, beware of literal translations, because being a teacher, both in these YouTube videos and also private lessons, I see a lot of mistakes coming from literal translations. Like, you have something in English, like an idiom, for example, some idiomatic expression or slang term or proverb, and then you translate directly into Danish, and it's really weird. Right? So you want to be aware of that. You want to say to yourself, if it's idiomatic or if it's like a metaphor in my language or in English, then it probably won't work in Danish. Right? The more colorful or idiomatic something is, the bigger the chance, or the higher the chance that it'll be wrong when translated directly. I hope that makes sense to you. So yeah, be aware of that. But with that in mind, do go to town and have some fun. Maybe you have a Danish fairy tale and you want to translate it into English or your own language. Or maybe you see something on a cereal box. Right? You're like, what does that mean? And then you just do that. It doesn't have to be a long text. It doesn't have to be like 2 pages and 500 words or 2,000 words or whatever. Maybe it's just 100 words. Right? So anything counts. It all matters. It all helps. So in the end, it adds up. So you want to translate something into Danish and then from Danish to the other language. Especially for beginners, this is very useful because you need to memorize And you'll also learn a lot of grammar. Something like verbs, like, oh, how do I conjugate that verb? You just start to see the patterns more and more, because as we say, practice makes perfect, or in Danish, øvelse gør mester. That's sort of the key here. So go ahead and translate. But when you get to a higher level, you want to start making your own sentences, because translating can be a little bit limiting if you really want to sound like a native. So again, it depends on your level. Do exercises. And this of course means do exercises with grammar and making sentences. That's like the main thing here. So you can do it on your phone, a tablet, or even computer if you have some app in there, or in a textbook. It is very old school having like a textbook to do exercises, but it's actually okay. It's not like the only thing you want to be doing, definitely not. But it is good. It's good because then you have sort of an idea. You get like a, how to call it, like a shape or a blueprint or a pattern that you can copy. Right? So they are good textbooks. Even though they're kind of boring, they can be quite boring sometimes. They do have something to offer. So I would always recommend at least doing some of that in tandem with other methods. Right? So maybe you have your textbook, you have your Duolingo or whatever, you have my videos, you have some children's books, something we'll get to later. You always mix it up. You don't want to be doing just one thing. The mobile apps, like I just said, there's Duolingo. There are others. Memrise, I think, is one. But anything really, anything that helps you, whether it's memorizing vocabulary or sentence structure. And true, a lot of the sentences in these apps can be rather strange. Like you'll never need to say them in real life, at least some of them. But it's okay, because it's just for sentence structure. And it's just for sentence structure, and then you can later on put in your own words. You just gotta get the gist of how the language works, how our grammar works. That's really it. So I always say do some exercises, and maybe it's not the most fun thing, but it's good. A little bit of it is definitely good. Oh, this one, use flashcards. So this is a little bit similar, but more limited. You can have some flashcards in an app, or like print it out, paper or whatever. And they're okay. You can definitely remember some words faster and more clearly if you have it like that, because then it's more concrete. Right? So flashcards, they're okay. Maybe you love it, who knows? Like to each their own. So it's something you can do, at least some of the time. A lot of it is words, like a lot of apps and physical cards are words. But I think you can also find something with sentences, relatively simple sentences, but still, you can find that. So yeah, it depends like what you prefer really. But flashcards, they can be good. There's an app called Anki or Anki, it's a Japanese word, and it has like all that, and you can even download it. Like other people have made collections or decks, as they call them, where you can just like use it. So you can save some time that way. Try it out. You might like it. Oh yeah, read children's books. So this one is it's a very common advice for any language, but there's a reason why it is. It is because it tends to work. Like children's books is fun. It can be boring, but it's mostly fun because you get a story and you have illustrations, and it's fairly simple vocabulary, and the sentence structure is also fairly simple. Again, there are not so many paragraphs, there are not so many interjections and like commas and side points being made. It's like one sentence punctuation. It's fairly simple that way, and you can still see like the prepositions and how they work. Oh, that's how you use på, that's how you use I og til og for, af og videre, all these prepositions. You see them in regular use. The vocabulary is pretty basic, especially if it's for smaller children. But the grammar is good, and even the basic vocabulary, you still need it. And if you're really smart, like if you really want to help yourself, then you'll get something that is translated from another language, because then you already know the story. I don't know what that could be. There's like a million different children's books. Find something where you already know the story, so you can guess it from the context. You know what they're trying to say. You know what the plot is, if there is a plot in a children's story. You just see it in Danish. So that can definitely be helpful. Now, as I wrote here, I said books for small children and books for older children or teenagers. Because of course there's a difference if it's something made for a 3-year-old kid or someone who's 14 or 15. There's a huge difference. So you pick the thing that suits your level. If you're very basic, you want to start with something for very small kids. It's kind of easy to guess that. It's maybe not so fun, but it's, it can help you. It definitely can help you. And then when you get to a higher level, you can have fun. You can read something a little more complex, maybe something aimed for young adults or teenagers, and it has a little more nuance and complexity, which is generally more interesting, because that's the thing, right? Like teachers, they always tell you, read some children's books, but then you try and you're like, shit, this is so boring because it's made for kids. So yeah, sort of grind it out, and then when you get to a higher level, you can have fun with the more advanced stuff, as with anything else. I mean, that's usually how it is with language learning. Listen to songs in Danish. Yeah, so, there are so many songs. You can pick new songs and old songs. First, I say popular music because it's on the radio, or on Spotify, or anywhere you want to go. So you just go and find it. And I would always recommend you to read the lyrics, either before, during, or after. Maybe you even print out the lyrics. You print out the lyrics because then you can look at it later. The beauty of songs is that they're not very long, compared to a movie, for example. So you can do it without having much time on your hands, and you don't have to commit so much. So that's kind of cool. And you can just print it out, and then you can highlight words, and like new words in red and known words in green, or maybe you want to divide it into word classes, and you put glitter around verbs, and you put something else under a noun. Whatever you want to do, like you can do that. You can learn a lot of vocabulary that way. Of course, music is literal. It's artistic, lyrical rather, is what I should say. So you cannot always copy what you hear. There are some strange things in songs that we don't say in real life, but you can say that about any language. So yeah, but yeah, popular music, that's definitely good. I would say, if you're into this, I would recommend rap music. And it's not just because I love rap music, but it's because in rap music you have more lyrics. Like, there's just more, and you might have 20 lines in a verse, where in a normal pop or rock song you only have like 4 or 8. So there's a lot more meat, if you will, in a rap song, rap track. But the real beauty, whether it's rap or singing, jazz, pop, or whatever, as long as there's some vocal, cannot be instrumental, it's not going to help you, is that you see what rhymes. You look at the lyrics and you're like, oh, this rhymes with that. They don't have the same spelling, but god damn, that's the answer, right? Like, that's how you learn something about Danish pronunciation. Because a lot of you are like thinking it's so difficult to guess the pronunciation from the spelling. You think it's random and arbitrary, but it's not. Like, there are rules, but sometimes they can be hard to get if it's just like a teacher being all boring and saying, yeah, there's this rule and then there's that rule. I mean, we do our best, but sometimes what you need is a song, or songs, more than one, to see what really rhymes, because if it rhymes, then it has the same sound, and that is beautiful, right? So yeah, always check out the lyrics. Do that. Then, of course, I wrote Disney songs, and I have a soft or weak spot for this, but they are good. The good thing about Disney songs or any children's or movie or cartoon or something like that is that you already know them. You know them from your childhood. I assume you watch some movies growing up, or even now. And because you know them so well, you have an emotional connection, like you feel something. You feel something when they sing about the love tonight or looking for, well, I don't want to say too much because, copyright. But you know the songs, you know the theme, and that makes it a lot easier. And I've tried this myself while learning Spanish or Japanese. Like I would check out a lot of Disney songs in those languages, and I didn't always like it. Like it was a bit weird, I would prefer the Danish or the English version. But it was still cool because there was just so much vocabulary, and you see how it's approached differently. Right? And then I would say pick the songs you know best. So if it's like Disney or DreamWorks or Pixar or whatever, like any of these cartoon studios, Ghibli also, pick the ones you already know to begin with at least, because then you have a better chance. If you pick a Disney or DreamWorks song that you never heard in your own language, then it's not going to help you. So, pick something that you already know. Okay, let's take a little pause here because there is something happening in the live chat. I'm first gonna address the questions. Herr Buchner says, "Can you recommend good Danish film?" Yeah, sure, there are many. Vi elsker dig for evigt. I Kina spiser de hunde. Blinkende lygter. Den eneste ene. Maybe I should write it. Yeah. There's a lot of good Danish movies. We actually have a very sick sense of humor sometimes, and a lot of profanity and nudity and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of good Danish movies. The bridge is good. Oh yeah, the bridge, broen is good. Spell, not NG. What a delicate, lovely voice. Okay. Do you know any good websites to buy Danish language books from other countries? That is a good question, Ninja Squirrel. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit boring and just say something regular like Amazon or whatever. Like you can find it anywhere. It shouldn't be too hard. When it comes to textbooks, most of them are pretty good. Like they get the job done. They're not spectacular, but they're all about equally good. As long as you make sure they're made by Danish people. That's like, you want to make sure of that first, definitely. But yeah, that's the main thing I would say. Alright, so no more questions for now. Let's continue. Listen to Danish podcasts or radio. Yes, so this is when you're at a higher level. Like when you have a higher level, when you've been practicing Danish for a while, probably at least a year or two, you want to listen to something. You don't always want to watch something, but you can turn on the radio or go to the podcast app in your phone, because it just gets you used to hearing it. And it has that very nice sound because people are talking right into the microphone like I'm doing now. So you can do that. You can listen to a lot of podcasts, and there are all kinds of topics. Of course, there's the news, and there's debates, and there's analyzing different things, religious stuff, there's stuff about technology, there's all kinds of topics. So it's really, really cool. We love discussing and debating in Denmark, so you can definitely find that in these podcasts. They're cool. I listen to it a lot, because they are made for Danish people. But you can also listen as a learner, assuming that your level is a little bit higher. If you're a complete beginner, you're not going to gain so much from it. But if you have like a slightly higher level, you can definitely get something from it. Yeah. There are some podcasts that are educational, but it's not so many. Not that I would recommend anyway. It's a fairly small, to use a business term, market learning Danish. So there are not so many products, not so many materials, unfortunately. But yeah, listen to that. And just like you can listen to music, you can also listen to radio. I mean, this is the key. You always want to be hearing something, reading something, watching something. Because if you see the Danish language as something you do in isolation, like I said before, once or twice a week you sit down like, okay, Danish o'clock, now it's time to study, now is the time to focus. If you do it so isolated, then what about rest of the time? Eh? You want to have Danish in your mind, in your ears so often that you don't forget it. And then some people say, oh, that's messy, that's unfocused. Well, maybe it's a little bit unfocused, but it allows you to relax more. Right? It's a more organic way. That's also how we learn Danish, and we learn our own language when growing up because everybody speaks it. So you want to hear it all the time. You don't want to like say, okay, I want to learn Danish, so now I'm gonna watch Thomas' video or whatever. And like you wanna use all kinds of materials at all times. Don't limit yourself. Let's see. So this one is talk to yourself in Danish. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone here to become like a schizophrenic or anything. But yeah, you can, if you're alone, or even if you're not alone, if you just don't give a fuck. If you're alone and you're just kind of chilling, why not? Like, you can chat a little bit. Like, det er en dejlig dag I dag. It's a nice day today. You can hum it, you can sing it if that helps. Like, hvad er det for noget? What's that? So you basically just repeat things that you already heard. You don't have to like think so deeply or focus so hard to, make up new sentences necessarily. You can just repeat what you heard someone else say, because that's what it is. I remember with Japanese, I would like do this. I would walk around and there's this theme song from One Piece where I would like put in my own words. And you can do that too, right? Like you have a sentence structure from Danish, something you heard in a song, something a politician said, something a friend said, and then you take the same sentence and maybe you just replace one or two words. That's also a good way to practice. Like I said, Danish needs to stay in your head, right? That's very important. It's a very good thing to do. So talk to yourself, right? You can also do a role play. Again, this requires some imagination, and some of you will be like, hell no, I don't want to do that. That's fine, it's okay, but it's an option, right? You can do that. You can like, you can talk to yourself a little bit, like this, I don't know, create some scenario where you say, hvad laver du? Jeg laver ikke noget. Okay, interessant. Like it's silly, it's stupid, but it helps you to use Danish in a way that's organic and fun. Because I don't want you to associate Danish, the language Danish, with something like studying, learning, it's education. I mean, yeah, I am teaching you and you are learning, but I want you to see it as something fun, right? So when you do a role play with yourself, it can be like that. It can be a little bit silly, right? Like, jeg drikker vand, og jeg mærkelig. I'm drinking water and I'm weird. Ikke? So you can just say whatever, because as long as you're practicing, it's all good. Also, you get to practice your pronunciation. There's a little warning here. You want to get feedback once in a while. If you want to practice your pronunciation, you want to have someone say, hey, that sounds a bit off, like a native speaker. But we'll get to that in a second. It definitely is a cool thing, talking to yourself in Danish or singing to yourself. Eh? It's a nice little activity you can do, also to kill time once in a while. Practice small talk with natives or native speakers. So, I mean, this is kind of obvious. Whenever you have the chance, I suggest that you at least try speaking with native Danish speakers. Is this easy? No. Why not? Because Danish people, most of us anyway, will be like, oh no, just speak English. It's okay. You don't have to use Danish with me. It's fine. And that's so annoying, right? That is what we call bjørnetjeneste, like a bear favor. It's a disservice. It's like they're helping you, but they're not really helping you. It's sort of, it's only short-term kindness or niceness because you need to learn. But Danish people, they generally lack patience. I say generally, but you can still find some, eh? Or maybe some situations people will be patient enough. So when you have that chance, when you are lucky enough to talk to a patient Dane, then yeah, okay, try it, strike a little conversation. Maybe just say some basic stuff. You don't have to talk about your feelings or the political situation or or whether this year compared to last year. Like, it doesn't have to be so nuanced. It could just be something like, det er lidt koldt, it's a little cold, eller hvad er det, what's that? Like, just little things like that, in the supermarket or with new friends or co-workers. Maybe you're worried you're gonna look like an idiot or you're gonna sound silly, but that's okay, because no matter what, you're gonna say something silly. Like, I don't know if that sounds harsh, but it's kind of true. Like, when you're learning a language, you're gonna say something from time to time that sounds really weird. And that's okay. We know that. We get it. The only reason why Danish people want you to speak English is because they, or we, well, I'm a teacher, so I'm different, I suppose, but most Danish people, they're not used to hearing so-called broken Danish. So they don't have the patience. Like, when I was in Spain, everybody had the patience to practice Spanish with me because they don't speak English. But in Denmark, it's, a different situation. So yeah, that's kind of how it is. Practice small talk. And, of course, if you can talk to some kids, that's easier. Kids, they're always more patient. Admittedly, their attention span is not very long, and they might look away suddenly or whatever, but that's how it is. But they don't care. If you say something weird, they don't care. They don't judge you, and they forget about it like 5 minutes later. So, yeah, that's cool. Some people, they are working as a au pair or nanny or whatever it might be. So if you're working with kids, that can definitely help. Or if you have kids, like some of you're married to a Dane and you have a kid together. That's definitely the case for some of my students. So yeah, it's something you want to do when you have the chance. I know it's not easy, but try. And if you really can't, then I suggest you do some language exchange or find a private teacher, because that can also help. Simply for the sake of practice, practice conversation. All right, I think that was the last one here, the last advice. Let me go through the live chat once more. Bale says hi. Herr Bygner says hi, great English, thank you. Ninja goes hi alle sammen. Shivkotsnov, I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry. Says I love you, okay. Delicate, lovely voice. Danish Queen is awesome. Yeah, she's kind of cool. Thanks, Thomas. All Danes are so kind like Thomas. I don't know. I generally think that Danish people are nice. Very direct. We generally say things as they are. But I think we have a fair amount of empathy for other people. It's sort of an interesting mix of individualism and collectivism. And like, the individual has freedom to do stuff, but we do care about society as a whole. That's what I would say, at least. To eternity butterflies. My husband is Danish and we speak English in our home, but I still need to learn Danish, and everyone changes to English when they hear me speak. Yep, I've heard that before. It's very, very common. It's unfortunately very common. So I think all you can do really is sort of baby step it. Like, when you have someone, one-on-one, like when you're talking privately, it's easier, because then you can steer or control the conversation, at least a little bit. So I would say that's the best bet, but it still takes time. It's not the easiest task. I would say, of all these pieces of advice, the hardest one is this last one, to practice small talk with natives. Because if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, then they don't want to practice with you because they want to chill. Like, you want to have fun, you want to enjoy. So like, they don't want to have a potential fight. You know what I mean? Like, because your Danish is awkward, or they're not good at explaining stuff, and then you get mad at the process. You're not mad at them, you're just frustrated because you sound like a toddler. Right? So at least that's how a lot of people feel. But yeah, anyway, it is a little bit hard. So you should just try whenever you see the little chance. It may be on the bus. It may be there's even a drunk person talking to you, because they don't give a fuck. Like, they'll just say whatever. Maybe an older lady will tell you a story like, well, yeah, bussen er lidt langsom I dag, the bus is a bit slow. No, I don't mean that as a disrespect to old people, but they tend to have less of a filter. So whenever you get the chance, like, you see little windows of opportunity, just take it. Whenever you see it, just go for it. That's what I would say. Okay. I think I went through the live chat already. Yes, I did. That's cool. So thank you guys. Thanks for watching. This was a little bit different today because normally I just give you a bunch of vocabulary and I repeat and blah blah blah, all that usual stuff. But I thought, like, recently I want to give you something that's a little more like about Denmark and your mindset living in Denmark, or mindset for learning Danish, right? Because it's not just the content of the language, it's also like how you look at the language. And why you want to learn the language. Like there's a whole, it's psychology, There's a lot of tips you can use. I'll probably make another video in the future about some of these advice more in depth, because this was a little bit all around. But I think in the future I'll cover them more in depth, and that could also be really, really interesting. So today is a little bit different. I'm not really gonna give you vocabulary or phrases or funny story. Today is more just me talking about the Danish language and the process of learning. When we're talking about grammar, there are some other approaches that come to mind, because you can look at a sentence and you can analyze it grammatically, or you can just memorize it. Like a lot of you're watching these basic videos, 150 basic phrases or phrases about animals or music or whatever. Like, you like that, and I know you like it because I can see it on the view count, and I know that YouTube is recommending that, right? So like, it's very popular to be learning phrases because it's sort of easy, well, quote unquote easy, because learning phrases is fine, but you don't really learn the structure a lot of the time if you're just copying, right? Like, it's good to know the grammar, because when you see the grammar, you're like, oh, okay, there's a reason why the sentence is this way. It's not just some coincidence or accident. Like, there's a rhythm here, right? And you need that rhythm when you are learning. If you're just like a tourist, or if you just came to Denmark, want to check it out, don't worry about it. Like, grammar, maybe not the most important thing in the beginning, but at some point you want to learn at least some. And some of you might be scared, what is that term, gramophobe? Like, some people are just like, oh no, hell no, I'm not doing that. I get that. When I was like a teenager, I hated that, like English grammar or German grammar, and later on Japanese grammar. I'm just like, no, I don't want to learn it. But it is pretty good, and so learning grammar can help you. It's not the only tool, it's not the only aspect, but it can help you. I would say that if you're relying on memorizing phrases, you can get to a decent level, like at least some basic level. You can say some stuff, have some little conversation, but you won't really be able to make your own sentences, because everything is like, well, what have I memorized, instead of making your own sentences, right? So it's kind of like that. Now, of course, you can combine it, right? Some teachers, they will say that you have to do this, I have to do that. I think it's either or, but I'm more like it's both and. You can do both. You can sort of alternate and switch between them. Grammar is cool. Well, it can be a pain in the ass, but it's also cool, because it gives you an overview of the language. That's the thing. It's like a sentence structure. You get an idea of the word order, how the words are structured in a sentence. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have any understanding, then it might become something very messy. Like, it's just sort of random where you put the words, and that can be very tricky. It can be tricky for a learner to find out and to guess. And it can also be tricky for a native Danish speaker to understand you, because they're just like, what are you trying to say? Right? So that's why you gotta know the sentence structure. And it takes some time, It's something about looking at sentences and repeating them and making your own. So sort of having a lot of phrases and sentences in your memory that helps to see the structure. And then when you're also studying grammar, like the rules in a more dry way, academic, what do you want to call it, like you're in school and they're explaining the theory to you, then that can help you to put it into context. Because that's basically what grammar does. Like, grammar helps you make sense of the language. If you don't have the grammar, you're sort of like, well, everything is connected, but I don't know how, and I don't know why. So grammar is like the glue sort of holds the language together, or the words together. Or you can just talk like a drunk person and not care, but no, let's be serious, you want to know some of it. Then of course there's the whole thing of, I could just memorize something and I don't have to learn the rules. And yeah, I mean, you can do that. I mean, that's what I did with English when I was a teenager, and it was fine because I had many years to do that, So I was like watching The Simpsons or whatever, and I just sort of passively absorbed all of that, and that was fine because I was in no rush. But if you're in Denmark, I'm gonna assume that you're already in your early, mid, or late 20s, or maybe even older, so you don't have like 10 years where you can just learn a little bit every day and absorb it that way. You want to speed it up a little bit, because memorizing takes time for most people. Now, some of you're just straight up gangsters, like you're so good at that. And I think I've had some students that are like, yep, I remembered, I memorized it, I'm that good, right? Well, they don't say the latter part, they're humble, but yeah. So, I mean, there are people who are good at it. Like, if your brain is wired that way, then sure, go ahead. But for most people, that doesn't really work. So grammar is the shortcut that you use to make sense of the language. Alright. That is sort of the headline here. It's the third time I'm saying it. Grammar is a shortcut. It helps you to make sense of the language. Right? So you have like a verb conjugation, for example. Now, if you just have a random verb in Danish, it doesn't matter which one it is, then it's good to know how to conjugate. Okay, so is this the present tense or the past tense? Is this the infinitive? Is the imperative? If you know that, then you can structure sentences more correctly, right? Because if you don't know it, then maybe you just end up speaking in present tense the whole time, or infinitive the whole time, or something else, like everything becomes very scattered and unfocused. So it's very good to know how it works, right? Like we have different categories of verbs. We have a lot that end with ede in the past, like dansede, hentede, lavede. And then we have some that end with te, like spiste or kørte. And then we have the irregular ones, like gik, så, gjorde. And that's just annoying. But nonetheless, it really helps because you can copy it, right? When you don't know the rules for conjugating verbs, you sort of have to do from scratch every time, or you just have to guess. And sometimes you'll be right, but a lot of the time, you'll be wrong. So why not make it easier for yourself, right? And I made some videos about that. More than one. Being aware of all this verb conjugation, it really, really helps you. Because then you have a clue, then you have something to go by. Something else that's very useful is word classes. Now, word classes is, as you probably know, whether it's a noun or a verb or an adverb or an adjective, preposition, and so on, right? And the reason why this is important is you don't want to be saying the wrong word class. Like elske is to love, but kærlighed is love as a concept. Or oplevelse is experience and experience, but at opleve is to experience. So you have to be aware of what word class you're dealing with. Otherwise, might be some pretty strange sentences, right? So it really helps you when you're aware of the word classes. Again, it's a shortcut. It doesn't mean it's a magic pill, I don't believe in that. But it does make it a little bit easier when you know what word class you're dealing with. Sometimes with my students, I ask them like, do you know what an adverb is, or how to tell if it's a verb or something else? And some of them do and some of them don't. And I'm like, well, okay, that's okay, because in your own language, you never had to learn it. And like it was just automatic, you're a kid or a baby, and you just kind of picked up the language and that was it. But now you're learning Danish, right? You are learning as an adult, so you want to use your intellect, for lack of a better term, to guide yourself, right? And it can really speed up the process. It's still going to take time, but you can make it happen faster by knowing the different word classes. You don't have to love the grammar or the idea of word classes, but just be aware, alright? Gender. Now, it's not masculine and feminine in Danish, but it's en og et, right? So basically, for grammatical purposes, let's just say that's gender. That also helps. If you know it's et hus, in a house, but it's en mand, a man, then you know it's huset or huset, and not husen, right? And it's mannen, not mannet. Something very basic like that. It also informs the adjective, right? En sjov film, a funny movie, not in short, because it would be it short. Now, you know this already because I talked about it in adjectives. There's 2 videos about that at least. But it's something you want to keep in mind. And when you know the gender, you can sort of save time. You don't have to go back like all the time like, oh, what is it? You can really make it a lot easier for yourself. So that's awesome knowing that. And also just something like, now that we're talking about nouns, if it's the singular or the plural, right? Like it's en cat, and it's katte, but other nouns have er in the plural, so that's that's a bit annoying. But being aware of how you end it in the plural versus the singular, right? When there's one or when there's more, it can also really help. So you don't accidentally put an S, like in English or Spanish, like glasses or something, because we don't do that, and we have our own rules. So sort of know how the different word classes work and function, whether it's verbs or nouns or adjectives or adverbs, right? Of course, prepositions. That can be a challenge, and I mean, some of you already know it. I made some videos about it here, right? About på and i and for and til, and at least those, and there's more on the drawing board, so there's a lot to cover. But prepositions are good because they're really the glue, right? Like if grammar is the glue, then prepositions would be, what's a good metaphor? Like the atom, right? in a cell or in a I'm not so good with physics and chemistry. You get what I'm trying to say, right? Like it is really, really the particle holding it together, right? The preposition. So it's til, or it's for, it's på, it's i, ved, mod, op. It's so many, right? And sure, they can have different meanings and purposes and functions, but there are some trends and tendencies and patterns that they follow. It's not totally random, right? There is a rhyme and reason to this. So when you have at least an approximate idea of how they work, then you can structure your sentences more correctly. You'll make fewer mistakes. Yeah. So yeah, it's fine to make mistakes, but sometimes, you feel better about yourself when you don't, and you're like, yeah, I did this, I got it, and it feels nice, it feels good, it's like a little victory, right? So yeah, knowing prepositions, that's super awesome. It's I know awesome is not normally the word you associate with grammar, but it's good stuff, right? So yeah, learn some prepositions, and again, I made videos about this, and the reason why I make these videos, well, it's obvious, so you're learning, is so that you can watch those, and then it's already sort of covered. Like you don't have to keep asking your teachers, right? You don't have to keep referring back. I mean, you can rewatch something, of course, but it's just so it's covered. You want to handle these things. So yeah, that's really important. And then sentence structure. Now, sentence structure I already kind of mentioned, right? Basically being aware of where the different words go. And something that's commonly a problem, and you all know this, is inversion, right? When it's a question or subordinate clause, like a ledsætning, then, the verb comes before the subject, and that can be pretty annoying. I get it. You're like, oh, why? Why do you do this in Danish? But yeah, that is something we do, and it's something you gotta get used to. And it's interesting because, all the students I have, or I've had over the years, they say like, yeah, Thomas, I understand inversion and the logic surrounding it, but I can't apply it. Like when I'm in the situation, I can't use it. I just sort of get nervous or get distracted or something like that. Right? So yeah, it's something about practicing and really internalizing it, so you don't have to think of the theory every time, but it just sort of becomes second nature, like it's really automatic for you. That's really good stuff. Right? But of course, it's not just about inversion. There's other things too, and like sentence structure in general. But I just mentioned that as a prime example because it is really a challenge for a lot of learners, and I get that. I mean, goddamn, it can. If you look at it from an outside perspective, it's really annoying. Sentence structure, right? Something you want to be aware of. Like all these together: verb conjugation, word classes, gender, prepositions, sentence structure. They are sort of what make up grammar. And now there are some more things, but I would say these are the key aspects. And if you can sort of get these down, then you'll get pretty far. Right? That's gonna help you a lot. Alright, so learning styles. Now this is where you are again comparing grammar to other methods. So you can master grammar. Like you can spend all your time really focusing on that, putting your effort into it, and that's cool, and I respect that, and it will help you, of course, because I'm making this video. But you can fall short a little bit, right? Because again, I've seen learners, students who were like studying the grammar and they knew it, but they couldn't have a normal conversation. Like maybe they could pass the test, but they wouldn't be able to talk. Maybe they could translate something because they think kind of schematically or mathematically, and like everything is sort of okay. There's an e there, and this preposition means that, and yada yada. Like they could sort of deduce from the patterns and stuff, but they couldn't make a proper sentence. Right? Well, they could, but it sounded very textbook. Or they couldn't have a normal conversation, and that kind of sucked. Right? In the beginning, of course, you're going to talk textbook anyway. That's fine, but at some point, you want to move beyond that. You want to sort of get better, to say it very bluntly. But mastering grammar can help you. Grammar is just something that helps you make sense of it. Right? But if there's some grammar that you can't get, like you can't get the theory, you don't have to. It's a means to an end. Right? It's not a goal in and of itself. It's not like the goal has to be that you know all these rules and then you can like claim some title or you can be proud of yourself or whatever. Like, no, it's not what it's about. Right? It's about learning the language. Grammar is just a way, it's an approach. It's a good one, but if you're more, geared towards something else or you're wired for something else, then use that. Right? Like whatever works for you. So that's kind of what I'll say about that. Grammar is good, but it's not everything, and don't get hung up on the term, and don't get hung up on whether something is a tense or mood or something like that. Because I've seen students like that, and like where like their grammatical understanding was pretty good, but then it was like they had so much theory in their head where they're like, oh, but Thomas, this doesn't make sense because you're like, yeah, but don't worry about that. It doesn't always have to make sense. Now, then some people, when I say that, they're like, oh, that's bullshit. What are you talking about? It has to make sense. Well, the language is going to make sense anyway, but you don't have to be aware of every single grammatical aspect. Right? Sometimes it's okay to just be like, well, I say it because Danish people say it. Right? It sounds right. It feels right. I've heard it before. And that's good enough. Right? You don't have to be a professor or an academic. Now, if you're a linguist or someone who already likes grammar, that's fine. But don't obsess over it. That's what I'm trying to say here. I already touched on it, but I think it bears some repeating. Memorizing of phrases. Again, this is fine, and as a beginner, it's good because as a beginner, you need the vocabulary. Like, you cannot study grammar if you don't have the vocabulary. Yes, the grammar is the glue, but if you don't have something to glue together, what's the point? And you just say with glue on your fingers. Sounds weird. The point is, you want some phrases because phrases contain vocabulary, words that you need to express yourself, to understand people. Alright? So you want to have that. You want to have at least some basic phrases in your head. But I said this before, and I'll say it again. Learning phrases is also overrated. And I don't want to blame people for their preferences, but it's like you might get the idea that it's very nice to learn from just phrases because it's sort of being given to you. You're just receiving it. Someone already made the sentences and you can just go and copy it, and that's fine. But first of all, it's hard to make phrase videos that really cover nuances. So like paraphrasing is not really a thing. It's usually like one idea or one desire, one thought is only expressed in one way in a given phrase video, because we want to keep it brief, and it's also about keeping people's attention. I mean, that doesn't sound nice, but it's true. So all these phrase videos, I mean, they're good, and I make them from time to time, but they're sort of overrated. I mean, you get started with that, and it's fine, but you want to move past that at some point. It's just not, it's not the ultimate goal to master a lot of phrases, okay? So yeah, with that being said, of course, you can utilize it, and just with a grain of salt, and everything in moderation. Then the third one I call intuitive learning, and that's sort of an umbrella term because it's the combination. I think that's where you have a little bit of everything, but it's about feeling the language. I think like you heard something so many times, and then it just feels right. It sounds correct, and that's what I did when I was a teenager. I was learning English, and I didn't really get the grammar. I mean, I knew some things, some theory, but most of the time, nothing. But then, at some point it just became so internalized. I think like, I've heard this so many times, and that was awesome. So that's intuitive. I've also had this conversation with students sometimes where they were like, I think this is the right way to say it. And then I'm like, you know why? And they're like, no, I don't know, but it feels right. I'm like, yeah, that's good enough. You're not a professor. You don't have to be able to explain it. As long as you can say the right thing or write the right thing, it's all good. Right? Intuitive learning. Yeah. Again, people are wired differently. Some are very logical minded. Others are very intuitive. Some need to read. Some need to write a diary. Like there's so many approaches. So do whatever works for you. There's not a one size fits all here, and I think that's like a main point. The last one I wrote here is copy pasting, and usually you associate that with something negative. Copy pasting, what are you talking about, man? No, it's basically just sort of copying what you're hearing, right? And I don't mean copying phrases, because phrases are limited and they're usually out of context. I mean, like you're watching a Danish movie or TV show or even a podcast. It's auditory, and then you just copy what you hear. Now, you don't understand it, but at least you're copying something from native speakers, and then you know it's correct. And in some cases, you might get the context wrong, or you say something that usually someone of your age or gender or whatever wouldn't say, but whatever, it's Denmark, we're not that formal. It's all good, right? A copy pasting can work. It is a tool. I think it is something that you can do. I did it a lot, again, learning languages, because I was like, grammar, it's just a strange concept to me, so just copy paste, and that's fine, right? But you want to combine it with other approaches. Sometimes you can study grammar, other times you can memorize some phrases from a video. Sometimes you can just sort of pay attention to everything around you, the way things are worded and phrased, and develop an intuitive understanding. And other times you just copy paste, you're like, well, I don't know the grammar, I don't know the rule, but a Danish person said it, so I can say it too, right? Kind of like that. So there are different learning styles, that's for sure. Then, of course, you also want to talk about the different ways of doing that. Like practicing your grammar, there are some ways you can go about it. Number one is very old school, but it still works. Textbooks, okay? There is nothing wrong with a good old textbook or a new textbook. They exist for a reason. I don't personally love them that much, but they can really help you. Like there's a lot of exercises in there that you can do that help you identify the patterns and the grammar in there. So it's not a bad thing, absolutely not. I know they can be boring, but they do help you. So yeah, textbooks, that's fine. It's very old school. Of course, in this modern age, we have apps. There's Duolingo, there's Memrise, there's, what else is there? There's a lot I'm not aware of, I'm sure, but there are many apps that you can use that can give you a sense of the flow of the language. Sometimes you don't have to know like all the theories, but it's not like you just have to copy it then. There's sort of a middle path, right? Like you just sort of the intuitive feel, and that actually brings me to the next point. You have sentence patterns. I'm very big on sentence patterns. I don't know if you guys can tell, but that's because I learned Japanese that way. Like, when I was 22, I didn't really get the concept of grammar. I mean, I knew what grammar was, but like, it didn't click in my head. I was just like, what is this? It's so abstract. So what I did was, like, I would take a sentence that I've heard or that I read, and then I would sort of look at structure intuitively. I didn't analyze too much, but just sort of getting an idea of the structure, and then replacing one or two words. Right? So in Danish, like, jeg kan godt lide at spise, jeg kan godt lide at danse, eller du er min bedste ven, eller du er min mormor, ikke? Eller whatever, ikke? So, like, you have a sentence that's already there. You don't have to build from scratch. And then you just replace one or two words. And that's totally fine. It'll be correct as long as it's the same word class, which, again, I talked about it before. You want to be aware of word classes, right? Because when you are, then it becomes a lot easier. Yeah, it's one of the foundations of practicing grammar, knowing word classes. Yeah, so word classes are important. I think that is what sentence patterns can help you with. It's an approach that I don't see so widespread. It doesn't seem very popular. Like, there's a lot of videos that teach Danish and other languages too, for that matter, where it's like very, let's learn this grammar theory with the object and the subject, and that's fine, but sometimes you can do something that's like in between feeling and copying and hardcore grammar theory, and that is sentence patterns, because inevitably, sooner or later, you're gonna pick up on the grammar when you copy these patterns, right? So that's what I'll say about that. And then, of course, there's the classic that I love saying is you want to take notes from videos. This could be my videos, but it could also be non-educational videos, right? Let's look at the educational videos first. Last week, for example, I did the video where I broke down 3 videos, I think, like some classic videos. And it was cool, because it was like, okay, let's pause it once in a while, and then look at the words here. Is there any double meaning? Is there a funny sentence structure? Does the meaning change depending on where this word is placed? And like nok and okay. Nok can mean enough, but it can also mean probably. So that's kind of strange, right? But it's something you learn as you go along. So, you can do that on your own, like watching my videos or someone else's, where you're just like pausing it every time there's something you don't get or something that you find interesting and curious. You're like, let's take a closer look here. Right? So that's really good. Or you can also just write down vocabulary, and that also works. I've had some students like that. They had like long list of vocabulary, like this word, this word, this word, this word. I'm like, all right. You're not going to remember everything, but some of it will stick. So that's pretty good. Can take a lot of notes from videos. It doesn't have to be videos. It can also be podcasts. Audiobooks. Yeah, I love audiobooks a bit too much, maybe. And what else? I mean, like regular videos, like made for Danish people. Movies, TV shows, whatever it might be. Right? Recently, I really got into Clone. I think I'll talk more about that in another video in depth. But basically, it's a sitcom. Again, it's really cool because it's like down-to-earth, regular Danish. It's not like fancy or strange or, trying to experiment with the language so much. It's very, very down-to-earth, daily life kind of Danish. So that's really good stuff, right? Taking notes, and then you can ask a teacher later. You're like, I don't get this grammar point, or this little structure is weird. Please explain it to me. Right? You can do that. It's really good stuff. So yeah, I would always say you want to be taking notes. And just to recap here, right? You got the textbooks and the apps and the sentence patterns before that. Textbooks are not the most fun, but they're your friend. They're sort of like the friend you don't like. Or maybe a family member that keeps you in good shape. As weird as that sounds. Apps, a little more fun. Not the most fun in the world, but yeah, they get the job done, I would say. Sentence patterns, yeah, you can definitely get something out of that. It's not that popular, but that's actually a little baffling to me, because they're awesome, right? So that is it. Now, to answer the original question, the title of the video, how important is Danish grammar? Like, how important is it to learn? I would say you should know at least fundamental grammar. Something like personal pronouns, or word classes, and prepositions, sentence structure. Like, you should know at least the basics of how it works. Also because when you have a teacher, then he or she will use those terms. If you don't know the terms, you'll be like, what's that? Eh? So learn those terms. They'll help you. It sort of speeds up the process. Be familiar with that, and don't be afraid of grammar. Just be like, oh well, it's the glue of the language. Right? However, don't obsess over it. Don't think that you have to know every theory. And don't be so, don't focus too much on breaking down the grammar in every sentence. Use grammar when it helps you understand. But don't use grammar all the time if it makes it harder for you. Sometimes it's okay to just copy stuff, right? Because the goal is you speaking Danish, understanding and writing and so forth. Alright? So that is the answer, and I hope it helped you. Because I've been thinking about this for a while. You know, it's important to give you materials and stuff, but sometimes it's also the approach, it's the mindset, it's the way you're learning. Like I said, it's meta. Fluent. What does it mean to you if you hear that word? Because, yeah, I know there's like a dictionary definition, but you have to know with yourself what the goal is. Is it to speak perfect Danish? Basically make no mistakes, have no flaws, and just, be able to, yeah, there's another way to say it, be perfect. Is that your goal? That is attainable. It takes time, but you can learn a lot from just copying Danes. Like being in the environment and just sort of soaking it up. So that one is doable, but it takes time and a lot of effort. But maybe to you, it's not about being perfect, it's just that you want to be able to have conversations with ease. Like, you want to be there, in a conversation with a Danish person without having to think, right? Because something I hear fairly often from my students is that they're at work or with their boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it might be, and like they don't think fast enough. And like in Danish, they can't think fast enough to come up with a response to what they just heard, and that's frustrating. So maybe to you, the goal is to just be able to have a conversation in Danish without having to think. Just like breezing, it's just easy for you. Now, maybe you'll still make some mistakes. It's not a big deal. But just make sure that those mistakes are not confusing to the native speakers. Because if they're like all over the place, and if you're still struggling with things like inversion and stuff like that you gotta handle that, right? Had little mistakes here and there with maybe a wrong preposition is not a big deal. But yeah, this is what some of you probably have in mind. You don't need to be perfect. You just want to be able to talk to Danes without them looking at you in a weird way, or without them being like, no, it's okay, let's just do it in English. Because I know that you all had that experience at least a few times. That's how it is in Denmark, because our English is pretty good. But that also means that it's hard to learn the language. And Danish people are not so patient. Yeah, I know it's not fair, but that's just the truth, The kids are, adults, not so much. So yeah. But maybe to you, it's that you want to have the same level that a native speaker has. Like, you want to speak like me or someone you know. That's cool. But that's like the hardest of these three, like, you really have to be obsessed with the language, or like really, really immerse yourself in it, because it's not just about knowing a lot of words and having perfect grammar and pronunciation and so on. It's also like understanding the culture and why we use little filler words in a certain way. So that's like really, really hard. Like that's gonna take something, but I mean, it's still possible. if you live in Denmark long enough, I would say, right? So just to sort of summarize from this slide, make up your mind and really decide within yourself, what is your actual goal? Like, what is fluent to you? Don't worry about the dictionary definition. Worry about what it means to you. Okay? Cool. So that is like the introduction, really thinking about it. And then I have to say this, yeah, you see it right here in front of you. You gotta forget the magic pills, or magic fixes, quick fixes, any idea that you can learn Danish very fast in 2 hours or a week or a month or anything like that. It's it's laughable. And as a teacher and YouTuber, I see it online, with many languages, and it's marketing, right? Like, they'll say something like, learn Danish in just 1 hour, all the Danish you need, master the basics. And the thing is, of course, that's not true. It's just because they are selling you something. They know that you are, no offense, kind of lazy, or you don't want to use so much energy. So they appeal to that part of you. It's just marketing. You're not going to learn it so fast. Now, you can learn a lot in a month, but you're not going to get to a very high level, and that's okay, right? So for those of you who might still be a little bit hopeful and a little bit too optimistic that you can just learn it by studying very little, or by watching 2 videos, it's bullshit. Don't believe it. All right. I mean, I would love to to put out a video and just call it, this is the only Danish video you'll ever need. But it's not true. It's not. And also, you'll need more than just videos. You'll need different materials, but I'll get to that later. So, week, month, anything like that, forget about it. It's not gonna happen. Okay, so let's be realistic. Basically, it's that your brain needs time to integrate these new words, right? So you might hear something, maybe you remember the meaning, but it's not really in your vocabulary yet. Like, you don't remember it, or maybe you only remember it when you see it. You cannot summon the word. You cannot use it in a context. So you need time, because it's a cognitive thing. Like, it's something in your brain where you how can I say this? It's not just when you study, okay? It happens over a long time, that you're feeding your mind new things, and then it gets integrated. But it takes time. Some of it happens while you sleep. I think that's why sometimes you might dream in Danish, which is awesome. I remember the first time I dreamed in Japanese back in 2012. It was so cool. So, that's like a good sign. When you're starting to dream in Danish, or speak to yourself in Danish when you're, just chilling, that's a pretty good sign. And so it needs to sort of enter your subconscious mind. And yeah, it sounds a little woo-woo, but nah, it works. Also realize that there's a difference between knowing words and then being able to use them, especially with your own sentences. Because you might have memorized, let's do a quotation mark, quote unquote, memorized some words, and you can, if there's some multiple choice test, you can kind of pick the right one. But if you can't have a conversation, if you can't read it in a book and understand it, if you can't pronounce it, I mean, it doesn't matter. You gotta master the words, eh? And also you gotta be able to make your own sentences. So that's where some grammar comes in. And I'll make another video about that in the future, sort of grammar versus phrases and stuff like that. But for now, suffice to say, just know that you may have heard a word and you may even remember it, but it's not the same as being able to use it, right? So see it in different contexts. That is very, very helpful. Alright, cool. So the magic pills, flush them down the toilet, or whatever you want to call it. So, now let's look at it this way, because you have certain advantages, right? And it's not fair. It's never fair, but it is what it is. So there are some things, some conditions or circumstances that may make it easier or harder for you to learn a language. So you got to think about that. There are several factors. But I would say the first one is how many languages you already know. And what are those languages? Like, you got to think about that. Let's say you're a native English speaker. Okay, it's not the worst as in it could be harder. But you could also be closer. I mean, if you speak German, that's a lot easier. Swedish, obviously, Norwegian, Dutch, the many languages in the Germanic language family, but English is further away. So that makes it a little bit easier. If your native language is Spanish, that makes it somewhat harder. If it's Arabic, that's even harder. And Russian, Japanese, Chinese, Malay, like there's the further away they are from Danish, the harder it's going to be. And this is not something that I decided, it's just the way it is, right? But you can use it to advantage anyway. Like whatever language you have, there's probably something further away. And maybe you already know the grammar in some similar languages. Like I've had some students where, oh yeah, Thomas, I get this because it's similar in German. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah. Danish is not German, but it's a little bit close. So whatever knowledge you have, just use it. Yeah. So how close are they to Danish? That plays a very large role, I would say. And of course, it also comes down to how you feel about language learning in general. Like, do you think it's fun, or do you think it's boring, or when you do it, are you sort of excited about it? When you see new words, how quickly do you pick up? Like, how quickly do you remember and integrate them? There's a lot of different factors that prevent me from giving a one-size-fits-all answer or solution. Again, it would be cool if I could, right? That'd be the dream. But it's impossible because there's so many factors that play into this. How fast you're gonna progress and become fluent. So it's about how you feel about it, how close your own language is to it, and what other advantages you have. And if you have a good memory, both short-term and long-term, that can also really help you. And if you have a hard time grasping grammar concepts, that can make it harder. But then just find another way. Right? Like maybe it needs to be visual, or you need to quote-unquote taste the language. Right? There are different ways of going about it. But know who you are and what your advantages are and your disadvantages. Just be honest with yourself. Alright, cool. So, you gotta do what you gotta do. Right? When you're learning, I think you'll get to a point where you get bored. Like in the beginning, not in the complete total beginning, but maybe a few weeks or a month into it, you'll be like, oh, this is boring. I don't want to do the basics. You want to skip, but don't. Don't skip. Now, I really, really understand this because, again, Japanese, Spanish, shit, I remember, being 21 or whatever, and I was like, I don't want to do this, man. Just give me the cool phrases. Just give me the insults and the pickup lines and the whatever, right? So you want to skip to the sexy, glamorous stuff or to the cool stuff. But the thing is, you got to learn the basics. And I don't say that because I want to be boring or whatever. I'm saying it because the basic is the base, it's the foundation, and you build on top of that. If you are trying to rush to a higher level and you don't have the basics down, then you'll not be able to understand why things are the way they are. Like, why do you construct sentences like that? Oh, there are so many conjunctions, there are so many commas. Why is there inversion here? Oh, this is weird verb conjugation. Right, that's because you didn't do your due diligence with the basics. So you got to do that. And I know it can be boring, but if you do that, it's not gonna come back and bite you later. It's not fun to be bitten that way, because then it's like, okay, I thought I was done with this, but I'm not, so I gotta go back again. Yeah, so just do it the first time around. Cover the basics, self-introduction, numbers, alphabet, simple adjectives, all these kinds of things. I made videos to cover all of this, so they're not really that hard to come across, in the form of materials. But yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do, and you gotta be patient, right? So you can have a goal and have a short time, but at the same time, you gotta be patient. Because like I said before, you need to integrate it. Like your brain, your mind needs time to remember and put these words into context, something that makes sense. So you gotta be patient. You can't sit there with like your pen and paper or computer or tablet or whatever and God damn it, why can't I remember? Like get all angry at yourself or the language or me or Denmark or like anyone or anything, like whatever, right? It makes no sense. So yeah, you gotta be patient and not get too frustrated. I've actually seen students near or really cry before because they were having such a hard time, and I'm like, yo, just chill. I mean, it's okay, and just treat it like a game. Treat it like you're having fun. It's kind of like you got to molten core or whatever, and you got to something, and then you just gotta take it step by step. All right, cool. So with that in mind, let's move to this one. Okay, the time you invest. Yeah, this is important because I think that it's very important to be persistent. Maybe sometimes you can feel motivated and you sit down for like 2 hours and you're really hardcore, but then after that you don't study for 2 weeks. That's not cool. It's not cool because it's not effective. All right. So you gotta consider like how often do you study, like how many times per week do you sit down or walk around, whatever your preference is, and study. How often do you hear new words? And it has to be on a regular basis, because if you take like long breaks, then it's kind of like what you did before doesn't really count, or it was a waste of time. Not a complete waste of time, but it's kind of lost because there is kind of the retention, like how well it was kept in your memories, is kind of weak, and because you've been doing too many things in between. So you got to do it on a regular basis, just like hitting the gym or anything else. Yeah, don't take too long breaks. So I would say that. But of course, be realistic. Don't be so hardcore and, assume that you can study every day. I mean, if you can, that's cool. But if you think that's too hard, then don't do it. And it has to be sustainable. Definitely has to be that. Also, how long do you study? Like per session, let's call it a session. Like you sit down for maybe 20, 30 minutes or an hour, and then you just study. Maybe it's 2 times a week, and it's like 1 hour per session. Okay, so that's 2 hours. Well, maybe it's 4 times per week, but it's 30 minutes. So you can kind of decide that for yourself, but sort of schedule it and make time for it. Something that's kind of clever, you might have heard it before, is do it when you're bored, like when you're waiting for something, waiting for the bus, train, any kind of transportation. Your date didn't show up yet, like do something, like whether it's Duolingo or one of my videos or a little exercise you have, whatever you have nearby or available, like just play around with it, right? These little pockets of time, it all adds up. So yeah, of course it's also good to keep in mind here, the third point, whether you have a goal or a deadline. I've had many students over the years who got married, and it's a very common thing, like, oh yeah, I'm getting married soon, and so that kind of amps up the motivation, and that's cool. I'm not saying you have to get married to be motivated, but it can be a factor. Or having Danish kids, well, kids in Denmark, they grow up speaking Danish, of course. Whatever it is, like something in your, I don't know, in your life, workplace, it could be many different things. And then if you have a deadline, you can then work towards that. I hope the deadline is not just 1 month away. I hope it's several months or years. Or maybe it's the test, the citizenship test that you have. And that's also cool. So sort of be aware of what it is you're working towards and how long time you have. Because it is important. And it's not just like how long time you've been in Denmark. Because I've had many students over the years, somewhere, I kind of lost count, but let's say between 130, 150. And I've heard stories, I've seen cases of like someone being in Denmark for 5 years, and they speak like they've only been there for 1 year. And it is what it is, as a teacher, you don't judge it, and as the student, the learner who is in that situation, you gotta do what you gotta do, the best in the situation. But it does kind of speak to the fact that it's not just about how long time you spend in Denmark, but also like what you do, how often you study, and whether you take it seriously or not. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about, the time you invest. Oh, by the way, just because I say time you invest in studying, it doesn't mean it has to be boring. First of all, you see these videos, like especially the older classic videos I made, there's a lot of entertainment, like trying to make it interesting. And there are other ways too. There are other tools and materials, apps, things here and there that can make it more fun. So it doesn't have to be boring, okay? I don't subscribe to this idea that it has to be like, oh, I discipline myself and it's so boring and that means that it pays off. It's not necessarily like that, right? Alright, I think I made the point pretty clear. So, the next one is the money you invest. Now, this is something that I think a lot of people are trying to avoid. Understandably so, it's understandable. Because we see it as finite resource. And it's a little bit different than time, right? Because sort of time sometimes feels like you have a lot. I mean, people say they're busy, but money is a little more like, oh, I don't know about that. And this is what's interesting, because I remember when I was like learning other languages, I would also try to go online, YouTube, and also ways that were, shall we say, unofficial, to find materials to help me. But it was kind of a hassle. It was kind of annoying, always just having the basic stuff, like the short versions. Like what you get for free is very often the short version, sort of abridged, like it's shorter, and you're kind of cheating yourself, I would say. So that's a choice you gotta make, like how much are you willing to spend on this? Yeah, because there are many different ways you can go about it, right? Like maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a course, maybe it's some app that has like a premium function, subscription. It could be different things, but it is worth considering. Now, everybody, just like with time, you choose how you spend it. But if you are serious about learning Danish, then time and money is probably something you want to invest. Because otherwise, I mean, it's kind of like what you put into it, I guess what you get out of it. So that's something to take seriously. And trying to do it for free all the way is, you can do it, but it's limited. Like it's limited what you can learn. And if you're just willing to pay for something, like a private teacher or whatever it might be, then progress faster. Now, let's say you already done it. Let's say you bought a textbook or a course. There could be so many different things. How good has the ROI, return on investment, been? Like, did it pay off? Because that's also important, right? Like, it's not just about spending the money. You gotta really consider if it's worth it, and if you got like something, like if it was proportional to the size of the investment. That's important. So you always gotta keep that in mind, and you don't want to like waste your money, obviously, just like you don't want to waste your time. Yeah, because I think I've seen some students and other learners who would like buy I think some textbooks here and there, and then maybe they wouldn't use it, or they buy videos and then they didn't watch it so often. And I'm like, I mean, it's not just enough to buy it. You gotta use it. I know it's kind of obvious, but yeah, you can't just own it and say, oh yeah, it looks nice on my shelf. It's like, yeah, but how often do you open this book, or do you listen to this, or do you watch this? Like, yeah, you get the point. Yeah, and also you have to decide what materials are better for you, right? Like if it's something visual, like it's videos, audiobooks, podcast, children's books, watching Disney movies with subtitles, and then like changing the dub, the voice, the language. Like you really gotta think about that, right? Because not everything is equally useful to you as an individual. So you gotta put your money where it makes sense. Don't just buy something because everybody else is buying it. That's silly. Or because it's popular. Alright, enough about that. So now we talked so much about investing, but we also gotta talk about like how you study. And this is really interesting because again, I keep referring back to my private lessons because I've seen so many different styles of learning, and one of the biggest things is, if you have a teacher or you're talking to a native speaker, right, and you assume that they're gonna like be helpful to you if you ask questions, do you ask questions? Like, if you have any doubt or confusion, if there's something you're wondering about in the Danish language, are you gonna ask questions, or are you just gonna kind of keep it to yourself? Because this is big. In my experience, the students who progress the fastest are the ones who ask a lot of questions and take a lot of notes. Okay, so it could be little things, little nuances. Oh, okay, so this word over here, they're pretty similar. What's the difference? And then it's clarified and explained. So asking questions is very powerful. Now, I do realize you are not always in that position. If you go to sprogskole, as far as I know, it's free, or you get the money back after you finish, right? So it's pretty cheap. And that also means there's like a lot of other students. It's not exactly the perfect way for a lot of nuanced questions, but still try when you see there's a little opportunity to ask, like, oh, actually, I'm wondering about this. Can you clarify? Can you elaborate on this point? I don't get it. Why? Because otherwise, if you think you get it, but then you don't really, then you have like some wrong assumption about how the language works, and then you build on top of that assumption, and when you have a wrong or incorrect assumption, foundation, that's not gonna go well. Yeah, and so take notes also. Right? This can be on your phone, by hand, laptop, whatever. I don't really care. There's some people who insist that it has to be, with a pen and paper. And yeah, it is probably true. You memorize a little bit better, but it's okay to do it on your phone as well. And look at your notes. And you can bring them to the next lesson or session or whatever, like the way you're studying. Take notes. Yeah. And also, like, if you see a new word, maybe you're on the bus somewhere out in public. When you see a new word, do you look it up in a dictionary? Again, book, app, doesn't matter. Do you look up the new words? Because that can also teach you something new, right? Like, you see something in a new context. Advertising is very creative. It's full of shit, but it's creative. So when you see something new, how do you go about it? Do you just kind of like let it slide and forget about it? Or do you take notes, write it down, look it up? Those are little things. It's incremental, and like it's not something where you're gonna feel a huge like jump right away, like you're just a master. But it all adds up. It really does. And then do you implement what you just learned? Like, this is especially true when you have private teachers or you're talking to other native speakers. Like, do you sort of use what you just heard? Because the brain will hear something and then kind of keep it in there for a while, but if you don't use it, it'll kind of just be forgotten. There's a very high risk that you won't remember it. So you really got to ask yourself, if you implement it, if you use it, example sentences, write flashcards, say it to someone, like a random person. I know Denmark is not a country known for small talk between strangers. We're pretty bad at it, admittedly, but yeah, think about it, implement it, use it in some way, whether it's with other people or yourself, because otherwise you might forget it. Right? And it's not just about words, it's also like grammar points. It's about anything. You gotta use it in order not to lose it. That's a bit cliche, but it's true. So it's like how you study and how you learn. Right? Pretty important. And then I say, don't discriminate. That doesn't sound nice, right? Of course we won't. In this context, what it means is that all vocabulary you're learning is useful vocabulary. So, you might be, I don't know, reading from a comic book or children's book or something. But then you're picky. Right? Like, you only write some words down, even though there might be, let's say on a certain page there's like 8 new words. You only write 4 of them down, because the other 4, like, you translate them, you're like, oh, this word is not important. But that's where you're wrong, because sooner or later it's going to come back. and like it's going to come up. Yeah, of course, get the basics down first. We already covered that, and learn the first few hundred words. But after that, when you see something new, write it down. Don't discriminate and be picky about, oh, I don't know, this seems like I'm not gonna use it, so I'm taking. No, don't do that. Just don't, okay? Because you never know. You never know when it's gonna pop up. And also, it just makes it more interesting. Like, the more words you know, the more connections you can make, right? Because even though Danish might seem messy, random, confusing sometimes, there is a certain logic. Like, there's a reason why certain prepositions have a certain meaning, or suffixes or stuff like that. Like, you can see the connections with a larger vocabulary. So yeah, just do that. You don't always know what you're gonna need later or what you'll see later, right? So don't assume that. Actually, you need to be a little bit humble. And I know this is not easy because we kind of know what we want to learn. But when you're a learner, you don't know what's going to be useful later on. Alright, I'm spelling it out. You get the point. It's good to be curious. Be curious about the language, right? Just be open and write down and ask people about it when you get the chance, right? Because it's a good attitude to have, to be curious. Your mindset, well, I kind of already covered it, but I guess we could maybe summarize a bit. You gotta ask yourself, are you motivated? Do you actually feel motivated to do it? It's something only you can answer. Do you do it because you want to? Or is it a chore? Is it something you have to? Do you do it because people say you're supposed to learn Danish, but actually you don't want to? Are you doing it because you have that, again, test coming up? Okay, fair enough. So it's good to know why, right? I wouldn't say there's any kind of motivation that's wrong, but it's better if you have some kind of motivation. That's definitely it. But no, not so much more to say about this one, because we kind of already covered it. Now, this is sort of towards the end. How long does it take? Maybe some of you just clicked on this video and you're like, Thomas, you're just talking forever, just give us the answer. Yeah, it would be nice, right? But I actually take this seriously, so I'm not gonna just trick you and give you some fake answer. So here's the thing. The more of the boxes you check, like, you know, you're motivated, you're writing things down, you have your native language is closer to Danish, all of these factors that work in your favor. You invest money, you invest time. The more of these you can tick in green boxes, tick, 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 the faster you can learn. I've seen students go from pretty basic to sort of advanced conversation in, I'm gonna say 2.5 years, something like that. Yeah, we could be talking about the weather almost in the beginning, and then less than 3 years later, could be talking about politics. It's good stuff, right? But again, it's because they take notes and they ask questions and they write down, they watch a Danish movie and blah blah blah, all the things I just mentioned. So you can do a lot in, let's say, 2 or 3 years if you bust your ass off, right? While having fun. Be intense about it, put in effort, but also have fun. You can get pretty far in 2 or 3 years. Liam, you might remember Liam that I used to work with here on the channel. Let me see if I can remember the timeline. I think it was, well, you can always ask him. It wasn't very long. It was like 1 year. It was less than 2 years. He got like really good, like near fluent. Not completely fluent, right? But because you could still hear like he's got some English accent. But he got like really good. I'm like, damn, you know, he kind of has the flow of a Danish person when he speaks. That's really cool. And the way he did that, you know, was listen to a lot of music, but also just by being like a sponge, just soaking it all up. So that's really, really impressive. And he loved doing that. So it's a good example of someone learning with the heart, with passion. As cheesy as it may sound, right? It works. So it can be done in kind of short time if you have talent for it and if you also really put in the work. I'll tell you one more anecdote. I had another student, this was quite a few years ago, and she was, I forgot what country. It was maybe Bosnia or Serbia. Sorry to you guys if you're from there, I'm just mixing them up. She is from one of those countries, and she had been studying on her own for 4 or 5 months, I think. She never had a teacher. I don't think she had even been to Denmark. So when we started, she was kind of like lower intermediate level, and she had almost mastered inversion. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Like, to me, that's how someone usually speaks when they've been in Denmark for like maybe a year and a half, 2 years. So that was really, really cool. So some people will just learn faster than others. It's not fair, but at the same time, if you are one of the lucky ones, then good for you. If you're not, you can still try. It's not an excuse, right? I would say, I didn't write it here in these slides, but I would say that something to really pay attention to is accent. Now, everybody has an accent. I also have a bit of an accent. So you're probably never going to lose it completely. But it is good if it's not too strong. And like, there are certain accents that are just, that make it hard to understand. I would say some Slavic languages, Russian, Polish, Ukrainian, there's a lot. Spanish, Italian, Portuguese obviously, French maybe a little bit, Arabic, that's a strong one. It's like, if you have a very strong accent, it's harder for people to understand you, because an accent is not just, that you might mispronounce. It's like the stress you put, the flow of your voice, the tones, right? We're not Chinese, so it's not like 4 tones, but that sounded wrong. But no, seriously though, like, if you have a very strong accent, you really want to get that handled, because then Danish people will be more forgiving and patient. And again, it's not really fair, but it is what it is, right? If someone is like busy, they don't want to spend time to like decipher and like listen through your accent if it's really, really heavy. So get that down, like handle it as much as you can, wherever you're from. And in some cases it's easier. If you're from Germany, then it's not a big deal. Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, you get the point, alright? So let me just say it once more then. 2-3 years you can get pretty far. Whether you're completely fluent or not, that's up to you, how much you do. All these slides, taking it seriously, and a little bit of luck. Alright? Yeah. Alright, so that was basically it. Now, if you will just give me a moment, I gotta get some water. Dejligt. Så dejligt at drikke noget vand. Alright, so let me just look what we got going over here in the live chat. CJ the Mimics, I've been asking myself that ever since I started practicing every day for 2 years. I'm in Denmark right now, and I will say, talking online and in person helps so much. It's gotten to where my girlfriend and I can switch sometimes, but yes, being able to have a fluid conversation is what I like to get to as I do in English. Right, so that's the thing. And it's interesting you mentioned that girlfriend thing, because a lot of people will say that you learn better if your girlfriend or boyfriend is Danish, right? That is true, but only if you already have like a minimum base level. If you're a complete beginner, then they basically have to teach you everything, and that sucks. You're just gonna get frustrated. But if you're already kind of like lower intermediate or above that, then you can talk a little bit, and you'll definitely learn. That's a cool anecdote. Okay, Andreas Bødker, hvis jeg ikke kigger dine undervisning på YouTube... Hvis jeg ikke kigger dine undervisning på YouTube, jeg kigger hver dag danske Facebook-siden og starter med at skrive kommentarer på dansk. En sjov ting er, at jeg drømmer på dansk, jeg gør det. Okay. That's cool. Det er bare super. Yeah. By the way, it's din undervisning, ikke? It's singular. Well, I'm not gonna correct too much grammar now. Og dine videoer. Men ja, jeg ved ikke, hvad du mener. I know what you mean. Then Mauve, can't pronounce it. What podcast would you recommend to learn Danish? Well, I guess it depends if you mean like educational podcast or something to just practice your Danish. Danish Class 101 is kind of good actually, my only real competitor. Danish Class 101, they have some pretty good podcast if it just comes to like breaking down stuff. It's a little bit corporate, actually quite corporate and not so interesting, but they do break down vocabulary and sentence structure, so it's like pretty alright. Otherwise, I would say it's not so much podcast, it's more audiobooks, maybe the ones made for kids, right? It's really, really good. Okay, John Lux saying, I've been trying to read and listen to podcasts and movies, but I feel like my vocabulary still isn't there. I've been using Duolingo to help practice my vocabulary. Does this sound practical? Yeah, sure. Now, of course, I don't know how long you've been doing that. Listen to podcasts and watching movies. Let's see here. Now, sooner or later, some of it is gonna stick, right? But if it isn't, then maybe you need to use it more. Like if you're only listening or watching, it can be a little bit too passive. Maybe you should try to translate some text yourself and to use Duolingo. But Duolingo is kind of like halfway good. Like it's you get the grammar and the vocabulary, but they kind of put it up there for you, so you don't really make it from scratch, if you know what I mean. Yeah, but definitely make something more. Textbooks also fine, they're kind of boring, but they work. And I would also say, if you can afford it, get a private teacher, because then you can feel like you can ask any questions and you can have some conversational class. That's good stuff. Because sometimes you need to talk about something interesting, or your mind is like, I don't care about this. Yeah, so you need to make it interesting. Andreas Put, give you a thumbs up. What are you saying? Why don't Danes try to appreciate accents and recognize expats trying to communicate with locals? That is a good question. Now, I am only one man, so I cannot answer for every single Dane. I think it's that in Denmark we are not used to a lot of foreigners like speaking Danish. Like if you're in the US or an English-speaking country, I guess many Spanish-speaking countries, people are like happy that you're speaking their language, and they're like, yeah, whatever, we're used to people making mistakes and having accents. Danish people, we're not so much used to it, although, you know, we do hear like Arabic and Turkish accent, as I'm sure many of you are aware of. There's a lot of people from those countries in Denmark, have been for generations. So those we're kind of used to, but it's just, besides that, like, we don't hear it much, right? So, we're not used to the accent. Sorry. Yeah, that's definitely something I would say. Yeah. Like I've been teaching for so many years, so I don't hear it anymore. But if like someone from my family like walks by while I'm teaching, they're like, what is that? I'm like, what do you mean? This is what they're saying. Yeah. Nah, anyway. Carly Duplessis is saying maybe use flashcards and pictures. Yeah, sure, flashcards are good too. It's not the most interesting thing, but it can help a little bit, right? Like I made another video about a year ago, a little over a year, like how to learn Danish faster. And you can use flashcards, mixed with other things. Flashcards, Duolingo, textbooks, podcast, my videos, speaking to natives, whether adults or children, Disney movies or DreamWorks, whatever, cartoons in Danish. If you know the story, it helps a lot. There's a lot of things you can do in that department. And John Lux saying, that's great, thank you. Yeah, awesome. Det er jo bare fantastisk. So yeah, this was nice. And I thought it was about time I made a video talking about the language and the learning process instead of giving you vocabulary and stuff like I normally do. So yeah, that's great. When you think about Danish phrases, you might be thinking, that's awesome, that is the best, that is what I want. And if you're a learner, especially if you're a beginner, that is what you are looking for. And it makes sense. They are popular. Why is that? Well, first of all, they are pre-made. basically you don't have to think. You don't need to put words together to know any grammar, well, there's very, very little effort. And everybody likes that. Everybody likes to preserve energy. Like, oh, this is nice, shortcut. Okay, cool. So that's one reason. And the other one is that they are short. And they're short, and most phrases you see in a video or phrase book, they're gonna be like 5, 6, 7 words. You're not gonna see something like 10, 12 words and like conjunctions and nah. That is what we actually use in real life, but that's not what you're gonna see in the videos and the books. So they're pretty short, and everybody likes something that's short, even though it doesn't really prepare you for how we speak to each other. But that's just, it's a thing. It's an industry thing. Then of course there's the thing that they're very situation based. It's like if you have a phrase video, it's already telling you when to use this phrase, so you don't need to think. Again, there's a lot of that non-thinking going on here. Like, you don't have to decide. It's already designed and tailored to a specific situation. And who doesn't like that? Right? It's so cool. It's pre-made, it's short, and you're already being told when to use it. And I know they're popular because if you go here on YouTube, or really anywhere I think, and you type in learn Danish, you're gonna get a lot of phrase videos. And not only that, you're also gonna get something like basic vocabulary, like isolated words and some grammar. But it does seem that phrases take the number one spot, and that is okay. But it is not everything. Phrases, they do help, but there are some limitations, I would say, and we're gonna get to that, and we're really gonna get into the details here. So that is why they're popular. Oh, and a quick little note: I can relate, because when I was 21, like back in it's a long time. No, it's not that long ago. Back in 2011, I was in Japan, and I took the phrase book. I went to the library and was like, this is it. This is the thing. I saw the grammar books. I'm like, hell no. There are some textbooks and other things with like isolated vocabulary, a whole lot of materials. I didn't want to do that, because again, laziness. Just give me the easy thing. I don't want to learn sentence structure. Just tell me how to sound cool. And let me sound like a badass and go out and flirt with some girls or whatever. And like those things that you think sound awesome, especially if you're young, like, I don't know, younger than 25 maybe. And we tend to be more impatient. That's too bad, but it is what it is. Alright, so moving on to this, like the good stuff, and the reason why you can use phrases is that they're a great start. Like if you're a beginner, if you're pretty new to the Danish language, why not, right? It's a good way to learn many words at once, because you have a whole sentence and you have like maybe 6, 7, 8 whatever words, and that's good. And it's also easier to memorize because they're in clusters, like they're in groups, so there's like a connection and association. You can link them that way, so that is pretty good. And of course you have to learn greetings, like hi, goddag, farvel, and tak, undskyld, vi ses, all that kind of stuff. That is so basic. You gotta learn that. So that is like a very, very good thing about that. And the other good thing is that when you have these phrases and when you look at them and listen to them, is that you get a feel for the sentence structure. And you're kind of like, okay, I see. So this is an adjective, and this is a verb. Here's the personal pronoun. Again, you kind of, assuming you also learn a little grammar at the same time, you get a sort of insight into how the language works. It doesn't substitute grammar. It doesn't mean you don't need to study grammar. Like, you should learn a little grammar at least. But it can kind of give you an idea of what it's about. So that's nice. And it makes it a little bit easier instead of just having hardcore grammar. Like there is some learners, they're like, what is the theory? What is the rule? And it's like, well, here's some rules. No, I want to know every rule. And like that is their main way of studying. That's not ideal because it's too theoretical. I mean, maybe if you're like a robot or a computer, you can do that. But for most people, it doesn't really work. So that is fine, like phrases. And I mean, you get the basics down fast, and you want to do that. Because in the beginning, the sucky thing, that's a great thing, is that you don't know anything, or very little. You're like, I don't know this word, I don't know that word, I'm kind of a newbie, I'm green. Okay, cool. But then the good thing is you progress very fast. Like one day, 0, and a week later, 30 words. So you really learn at an exponential rate in the beginning, and that's good, because then you can have fun. And it's important to have some positive experiences with the language in the beginning, because otherwise it's just like, oh man, I just started and I already lack motivation. You don't want to do that. Okay, cool. So that is basically why they're a great start. It's something that you can use to your advantage, because why not? And whatever gets you going. And I will also say that they are better than isolated words. And like some people, they have a vocab list, they have flashcards, and that's okay, but it's usually not as effective, because those words, they have no context. And because they have no context, they're hard to remember. But with this, you do have context. So yeah, that is very, very important, right, to keep in mind. So yeah, when you have context, it's easier to remember. Phrases are generally better than isolated words. Now, of course, if you see some words here and there, and you remember them, then that's cool. But it's not really a method that I recommend, that you just sit and try to memorize words. And I really don't recommend that. That's what I would say. Sentences, or these phrases, they can give you some hint and give you some idea of how the grammar works. They don't really contain the rules, but they have the structure, right? You see the sentence structure. And when you have the phrases and the sentences in your memory, then you have an idea of how to apply the grammar. And like I said, if you just study grammar like it's your main thing, without vocabulary, it's not gonna go well. Let me just put it that way, right? So that's why phrases can do something very good for you in that sense, and definitely better than isolated words. Isolated words is just, it's not really the best method. The method here is you can find a better one. Now, of course, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, I would say anyway, is, not all phrases are equally useful. Everything is useful, everything has value, but there are some things which are more important than others. And I think that's important to touch on, right? Because there are so many videos. I have made a fair amount of phrase videos, and so have others, and there's stuff in Duolingo and many different sources. So what should you focus on? Well, the funny thing is, I find it funny anyway, that a lot of people, they really want to learn survival phrases. And when I say survival phrases, it's not just about physical survival. It's about anything that's like practical, and like service situations, a supermarket, airport, police station, train station, bus stop, these types of things where you're thinking, well, this is important to my, getting around, and so very basic things, and therefore I have to know these phrases. And actually, if you live in Denmark, you already know that our English is pretty good compared to many other countries, I think, for non-native speakers. So this is annoying when you're learning Danish, because it's hard to get practice, but it's good because it means that you don't really have to know all the survival phrases or practical phrases. Like in the supermarket asking about something, or post office or something like that. These are the situations when you either don't need to talk a lot, or you can use English because they are at work. And the people there, they're working. So they're not going to have a problem with using English. I mean, they might suck at it, like a little bit, have an accent and all. But those are not really the situations when you need Danish the most. Maybe learn the keywords, but don't put too much focus on them. And also, I mean, this idea that you're going to be in the supermarket and have an entire conversation with the cashier, it rarely happens. It's like, ja tak, ellers andet, kvittering, like a receipt, okay, thank you, have a nice day. Like it's very, very little that you actually say or that you actually hear. So there is an over focus in many learning materials on this, and it kind of drives me crazy. Well, maybe crazy is a strong word, but it does annoy me a little bit, because that is actually not what you need so much. Sure, it's good to know some stuff like hjælp, tak, vent, tak for hjælpen, nej tak, like of course all the very basic things. But trying to memorize something about how to buy a train ticket, it's not worth the energy, it really isn't. Or what to say in, I already said the supermarket, or any other official kind of situation where it's superficial relations, right, with other people. What you really need is anything related to socializing. When you talk to people that you know, co-workers, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, your in-laws, anyone where the conversation is going to be more personal and have more substance, that is when you really need a lot of vocabulary. That is when you gotta check your grammar and everything, really. And this is like the main thing, because in service situations there's not a lot of conversation anyway. But when you're with your co-workers and they're all Danish, they don't want to speak English all the time, they don't want to translate. And I get it, I don't mind, but they're not used to speaking English all the time, so they don't want to do that. But that also means that you just kind of have to focus on that, right? And what is that? I mean, it's gossip, talking about their lives. Someone, I don't know, dislikes the boss, or maybe someone is pregnant, or someone has a depression, or it could be a million different things. It could also be pop culture. Maybe you're with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, they're Danish of course, and then they're talking about a football game, or a concert that they went to, or oh, I missed this thing, or I heard this new movie is good, blah blah blah. Regular everyday conversation, politics even, not everybody, but some people. So this is what's so important, and I really, really want to stress this point, because there is this misunderstanding that you should focus on the survival and practical phrases. And I would say maybe learn some of them, but if you're going to live in Denmark and have friends and good connections with people that you know, you're much better off putting your energy into this, and something related to socializing. And I'll probably repeat this point a few more times, because it's so huge. This is what you need. I get the logic though. I mean, in many countries you do need the survival phrases. Like I'm in Thailand right now. If I go downstairs, go to 7-Eleven and I'm like, oh, I say something in English, they won't get it, right? But you're in Denmark, or you're going to Denmark. So what you need is to be able to talk to people on the more personal level, and not in this official way. And besides, we're not that formal in Denmark anyway. So yeah. So some phrases are definitely more useful than others. That's just how it is. And it's not like I decided this. It's just you gotta think about the situations that you're in. And what's more important, being able to make small talk at the supermarket, or understanding your in-laws when they're cracking jokes? I think you know which is more important. So, there is one more on this slide that I want to touch on. Is slang terms, catchphrases, insults, and I guess I could also include over-the-top praise and compliments in this one. Basically like very colorful Danish. It's everybody wants this. And again, I get it, because when I was young, like I didn't want to want to learn, something boring, like introducing yourself or talking about the weather, like, oh, forget about that, man. Just tell me how to be cool, to be rebellious, or to sound intellectual, like if that's your thing. Like you want to skip. You might feel the urge to skip, and there's something driving you towards insults because, yeah, it's so fun if we break the rules. I mean, we all like it. Sometimes it feels good. And of course, I mean, if you happen to remember something, some insults or some swear words, it's all good. But it's not really the essence, the meat, the bread and butter, to really have a lot of metaphors here. You want to think about it like, how will I actually speak? Oh, they're coming for us. This is dangerous stuff we're doing. So yeah, insults, something like catchphrases. This is a little more limited, of course, because you probably already know that it relies on pop culture and stuff like that, or maybe slogans, saying something from a commercial, sure. But again, you cannot carry a conversation like this. You cannot carry a conversation just by saying cool random things. I think most of you know that, but it's, just in case anybody's really enamored with certain things. It's like, I learned a lot of English from watching The Simpsons when I was a teenager, but it didn't mean that I, walked around and talked like Bart Simpson, because that would be ridiculous. So yeah, try to speak like a real person. And slang terms. Yeah, this is cool, but if you're at a lower level, like a beginner, it's just kind of risky because you don't even have the basics down, like the fundamentals. There's stuff you're lacking. And that means you don't have the foundation, and then you're trying to build on top of that with something way more advanced, or something that's like, you have a word and then you kind of chop it up, and that's the slangy version. Or it's something like half Danish, half English, or it's some insider joke, or it's something again from pop culture. There are so many things that you don't know, like you don't know the original meaning of the word or the origin of the slang term. And therefore it's kind of risky to learn that early on. And don't get me wrong, it's fun, right? Like you see something funky in the dictionary, like, yeah, this is a lot more fun than the simple stuff that Thomas is teaching me. Hell yeah. But it's just not responsible, eh? So it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. Like I said, survival phrases, sure, learn some. You gotta learn greetings, but long sentences, or these kind of long sentences about getting around and official situations, you're not gonna need it a lot. And focus on what you're gonna say to the people you know, because I assume you want to socialize with Danish people, that's kind of why you're there. It's one of the reasons anyway. Then we're getting to this, and this is a little bit outside the scope, but I'm like, well, who cares? I just changed the scope. Paraphrasing or rephrasing. Essentially, if you watch phrase videos or get something from phrase books or an app, you might get stuck. You might kind of get so used to a phrase sounding a certain way. And it is correct, but that doesn't mean it's the only way you can say it. So then you go out into the world in Denmark, and people say the same thing but in a slightly different way, and then you're confused. You're like, oh, what? And the only difference is maybe a different verb or a different preposition or filler word, and that can totally throw you off because you are so used to phrases like this static thing. But we just put together phrases for you to get started, and it's just an introduction to the language. It's not an entire roadmap. It's not a dictionary, where you can just be like, okay, this is what I can expect to hear, and if I hear it in another way, then this video was wrong, or people are weird, or I don't know. People have different responses to what I'm saying now. So you wanna, learn to look at the sentence and look at the point, the message that's trying to convey, even if it's just something basic. And realize that, of course, you can express the same idea in different ways. It's kind of obvious, but, paraphrasing, rephrasing. It is really good, and it's something you want to do. You want to get into that at some point. As a beginner, no, it's fine. Just say the basic stuff and learn some grammar and have some fun with my videos. So whatever you can get your hands on, it's good, it's fine. But eventually, you gotta realize that if you want to sound more native, if you want to sound like, well, not a textbook, not Duolingo, then you have to paraphrase, or you have to make your own sentences and to move words around. Like you have a sentence, it's okay, it's cool, it's nice, it's a little phrase, whatever, but you can move some words around, right? Or you can replace one with another one. Oh, this is a verb in infinitive, let me put another verb in infinitive. Because you gotta make it your own. And this idea of copy pasting, it is not super good. Now, to be fair, there will be another video in the future where I talk about this. You can actually do a lot with copying, but it has to be done the right way, with the right approach. This is not it, okay? Alright, cool. So, I have some examples here of paraphrasing, rephrasing. Så jeg er sulten. I think most of you know that jeg er sulten means I'm hungry. There's nothing new there. Okay, cool. Så jeg er sulten. That's something you can say. But you could also say, jeg skal have noget i maven. Jeg har ikke spist i flere timer. Jeg kunne spise en hel something. Jeg trænger til noget at spise. So I'm hungry. I need something in my stomach. Jeg har ikke spist i flere timer. I haven't eaten for many hours. Jeg kunne spise en hel. I could eat an entire something. Jeg trænger til noget at spise. I need something to eat. I need to eat something. And yeah, word by word, they don't mean I am hungry, but it's the same message. You can expect to hear this, and it's also something that you should be able to use yourself. And if you just walk around and say, jeg er sulten, whenever you want to eat, it's fine, but it's not very high level. Right? So that is also something you need to remember. Cool. So this is maybe the peak, maybe the most important thing, because I told you that there are limitations to phrases, and this is the ultimate one. It is that long format text, like anything that's long format, speech, dialogue, monologue, song lyrics, story, subtitles for a video, is always better than phrases. That's just how it is. Why? Well, phrases give you context more than isolated words, absolutely. But you have a bigger context when something is long format, because phrases, like if you see them in a video, I mean, even in my videos, yeah, it's good, but they are not really connected. They're just loosely related because of a topic. It's not like one thing is a reply to another or continuation. So because there's no real context, like a big context, it's kind of hard to grasp it. And long format text is, and anything that's long format, is a better representation of how we actually speak and how we actually think. Phrases are kind of designed to be easy to remember, like for beginners. But if you don't read anything long format, if you don't read children's books, at least you gotta read that. That is like the minimum. Then you will not really get a natural feel for how the language is. And the language is a lot more interesting than phrases and example sentences. Something else I could mention is that, I look around. So yeah, when I put out a video, I'm very aware of what people like what's being promoted by YouTube, the average view duration, stuff like that. And I see something like a verb video, and this is a little bit different from phrases, but bear with me. I see something like a verb video with like 40 verbs, all with example sentences. Now that is good. It's a good little injection, and it's a good expansion of vocabulary. But it pales in comparison to anything long format. Because when something is long format, there is a coherent story and coherent theme. There is something that connects everything. When everything is isolated with example sentences for vocabulary or phrases that are only loosely connected through a theme, it is not very powerful. And it is much more powerful to read watch or listen to something that is long format. Again, I keep saying this because it is so true. And I'm gonna make a video about it one day, I think, where I just focus on this point and really show you how you can make the most of it. Because it's also that when you have something longer, there's more vocabulary that can be extracted, and you can extract it. You see that, oh, this is interesting, oh, and that's interesting, and it's something you would never see in a phrase book, on a phrase video, because those sentences are designed to be short. But that also means that something is missing. And typically, you will not see many conjunctions and stuff like if, when, because, though, and same in Danish, their translations. Words like that, you don't really see that in phrases because it's not good for business. And it's much better for business making it short. And that's because sometimes the people out there, they don't give a shit about you learning. They just want to get the most views or sell the most. Right? And that's the truth. With longer format text, you can learn more. And also the language is just easier to internalize. Internalize essentially means that you integrate it and you kind of make it a part of you or part of your memory. It's not just something you're trying to memorize. It's something you're actually, you put it in your head and you make connections to it. You actually care about it. It's very hard to care about phrases. Like, why would you? And like, okay, 2 cups of coffee, thank you. It's like, I don't care. But if it's a story, if it's a speech, dialogue, monologue, debate, anything, right? A song could be rap lyrics or poetry, although poetry is a little more advanced. So maybe wait, don't do that as a beginner or anything. But it has much more content, like, or rather substance. Like, there's so much in it. There's so much you can learn from it. It opens up Danish in a new way. So I would recommend you that. Like, I almost insist, well, I cannot force you, but I would say stop watching all the phrase videos. I mean, you can still watch them once in a while, but start getting into the long format stuff, because this is where this is the good stuff, man. This is the gold. Maybe it's not as fun at first, but in the long run, you learn much more, and you get so much better at understanding people, understanding movies or the news or anything you observe, because, we don't speak in short sentences all the time. It'd be nice if we did, for you learners, but we don't. So yeah. The thing is that some people, they prefer to learn phrases or shorter sentences in general because they're like, okay, but this is useful. I know I'm going to use this. I know I'm going to go to the bakery or to the job interview, or I'm going to have a transit in Copenhagen airport, whatever. So you're like, okay, this is very focused. This is very serious. So I'm going to narrow my focus just to this. But that is it's very reductive. And you're missing out on so much. And also, you don't know what you're gonna hear. You don't know what you're gonna hear from people. So you cannot predict it. You don't know exactly what's coming your way. That's the thing. And even if you can, there is always something to take away from something long format. I'm gonna show you in a second with some examples. Right? Maybe you cannot copy like word by word, like the exact same sentence and then just repeat it. But you can take a chunk, or you can take the essence, or you can take the end. Like, you can take something from a text and be like, oh, okay, and then I can just put my own stuff. It is so good. Like, if you can really do that, you can save yourself so many headaches by just accepting that this is how it is. It's a paradigm shift, like, if you really embrace it. So I'm very passionate about this because I know it works. And having been a teacher for like 9 years and also learned a few other languages myself, I know what works. And alright, let me show you something concrete. So this is something I wrote some years ago. It's a little short story. I'm gonna provide a little translation verbally. I didn't write it down. But I want you to focus on the second slide when I mark some of these in red. Anyway, here we go. Olivia ser de billeder, der er blevet taget, og hun er nogenlunde tilfreds. Ikke hendes bedste, men de kan gå an. Og desuden bliver hun jo betalt for det, så man ikke 2.000 kroner for 3 timers arbejde vil få hende til at se lidt anderledes på det. Hun skifter tøj og fjerner sin makeup. Og mens hun gør det, nynner hun en sang. Now that was a little bit fast, but don't you worry about that. We have time. So to do a little translation, Olivia ser de billeder. Olivia sees the photos. Der er blevet taget, that have been taken, og hun er nogenlunde tilfreds. She is fairly satisfied, happy. Ikke hendes bedste, not her best, men de kan gå an, but they'll do, they're good enough. Og desuden bliver hun jo betalt for det, and besides, she's being paid for it. Så mon ikke, so don't you think, isn't it likely? 2.000 kroner for 3 timers arbejde, 2.000 kroner for 3 hours of work, vil få hende til at, will cause her to se lidt anderledes på det, look at it a little differently. Hun skifter tøj, she changes clothes, og fjerner sin makeup, and removes her makeup. Og mens hun gør det, while she does that, nynner hun en sang, she hums a song. Okay, so why is this so interesting? Why am I so passionate about it? Well, here's the thing. I took some stuff in red, and actually I could have highlighted more, but I just chose a few today to show you that you can take this out of this long text and use it in your own sentences. Nogenlunde tilfreds, fairly happy, like alright, fairly satisfied. You can say, jamen jeg er nogenlunde tilfreds. Er du nogenlunde tilfreds? So you can just put your own personal pronoun. Right? It doesn't matter that you're not gonna say, hun er nogenlunde tilfreds. God damn it, put your own personal pronoun. Think, play, experiment. Ikke hendes bedste, men de kan gå an. It can go an means they'll do. Like it, I can settle for this. It's good enough. Det går an, eller det kan gå an. Something is just good enough. You can put so many things before that. You just gotta think the vocabulary that you already have. And so you learn vocabulary when you read these texts. And then you can put it together. I mean, it is just so powerful. But of course, you gotta have basic grammar and stuff. Otherwise, you can't. But if you got that, then it's so good. Again, that's what takes you to a higher level. Desuden bliver hun jo betalt for det. Besides, she's being paid for it. You can just take betalt, paid, and put in something else. Hun bliver belønnet, rewarded. And hun bliver straffet, punished. I mean, that's weird, but you can put anything in the past. Bliver hun jo for det. Og desuden, just take that. Besides, desuden er det jo også rigtigt. Besides, it is true. Just take the useful stuff. Like whatever you find useful, and then add your own. Before or after, as long as it makes sense grammatically. So Monique, so don't you think, isn't it likely? Monique is like, it seems likely that, well, don't you think that it could happen? Something like that. Monique, det går, don't you think it's gonna be okay? Monique, vi når det. Don't you think we're gonna make it? So many things you can do with that. You get the point, Hun skifter tøj, she changes her clothes, jeg skifter tøj, og han sidder og skifter tøj, eller han er ude og skifter tøj. You can just play around with the words. Mens hun gør det, while she does that, you can say so many things. So you can just add anything after that. Og mens jeg gør det, and while I do that, something else. Nynner hun en sang. Oh, there's a little inversion, but of course you understand inversion by now. Nynner hun en sang, She hums a song, she is humming a song. You can just say, jeg nynner bare. Jeg nynner en lille sang. Oh, a little song, just add an adjective. So much stuff you can do. So yeah, I want you to look at the language, the process of learning as something that's alive and something that's always evolving. And I'm not just saying that because it sounds fancy or cool, but because it's true. And because you want the language to come alive. And it will never really do that if you just focus on phrases. Now, to be fair, I don't know how many of you out there are so stuck on phrases. I just know that phrase videos are super popular. It's not like I can complain. I mean, it looks good on my channel. The most popular video is 150 basic phrases. They're original from 2017. But it also kind of speaks to the fact, or to what I'm saying here, that people really, really want that. But then as soon as something is like long format or a little bit different, then they don't click on it, or they don't watch very much. I can see it. I mean, numbers don't lie. I can see that. Right? So this is definitely something you want to think about. And when I'm saying that this is a good format, long format stuff is powerful, it's because it is. It's also a lot more fun. You can actually get into a story about something that happened, rather than just trying to memorizing a bunch of stuff that, a lot of phrases that have no connection to each other. So that is pretty much what I want to talk about for today. As you can hear, this is something that is very important to me, but it's also because I want people to get better. Like, I see it, in comments and private messages and so on, that people are struggling. And I don't think that people are not working enough or studying enough. I don't think that people are lazy, not for the most part. I think it's more that you're using the wrong approach. What is it they say? Work smarter, not harder. This is really about working smarter or studying smarter. It can be way more efficient. So, watch this video again. Like, it's a lot to take in. Maybe you need to watch it in 2 or 3 sittings. That's fine. Whatever it takes. And really consider if you're doing the best you can, like in terms of picking the best strategy. Because you're probably not. But that's okay, because now you know. Now you know, and now you can do something about it. So, yeah. Today I'm gonna give you some suggestions for things you can watch and listen to. And of course there are many more things than what I'm bringing up in this video. But this is something to get you started, alright? So that's what we're gonna do today. So we're starting with movies, okay? And I didn't write the translation because it would be really weird in some cases. So here we have a lot of movies, and most of these, pretty much all of these, are pretty messed up. They really reflect Danish humor and something about our culture, that we have a tolerance, a room for this weirdness and quirky characters. So Kina spiser de hunde, that's a very unusual movie. A lot of violence, but in a kind of funny way, if you can think that's funny. Very messed up, and the title has nothing to do with the story of the plot. Gamle men i nye biler, it's kind of related to that. It's also kind of messed up, just a random title, but it's funny, kind of raw. De grønne slagter, I'm just saying a little bit about each movie, and some I might elaborate more on than others, but just to get an idea of what they actually are. De grønne slagter is it's interesting. It also has a premise that's a little bit disturbing, but kind of interesting. Blinkende lygter is kind of funny, but it's also a little more serious, because it does have some real themes about being an adult and being in charge of your own life and so on. And it's very good. I don't want to say too much. I would say it was one of the movies, when it came out in the year of 2000, it really started something. It really changed something in Danish movies. So if you can find that would be very good. And you can find this online, even the unofficial way. I'm not supposed to say it, but you can. Then there's Adamsæbler. I don't know if I want to say so much about it. It's interesting. There's some different themes that you wouldn't maybe expect to see together. So I would check it out. Store planer is a little more normal, a little more down to earth, but of course not completely, because store means big, so big plans. It's worth a watch, I would say. Store planer, yeah, you can check that out. Sprængfarlig bombe, this one, now of course we're all biased here, we all have opinions and stuff, but I find this movie hilarious. Sprængfarlig bombe, it is crazy. But it's very well made. Like, the jokes are really on point, and you can have a lot of fun with this movie. So highly recommended. Sprængfarlig bombe. Ledsaget udgang. It's kind of funny, but with a more serious vibe. It's yeah. Again, I don't want to spoil too much, but it has some good stuff in it, and it makes you think at the same time. So give it a shot. Fidibus. It's kind of light. One of the actors, he's not even a real actor. I mean, he's a rapper. I'm gonna get to him later. Yeah, but it's interesting. It's if you're not used to Danish movies, it might be kind of offensive, but yeah, it's definitely fun. And Sorte Kugler is very funny, but also pretty dark. There are some supernatural themes here in Sorte Kugler. It's with Anders Madsen. He's a comedian. I'm also gonna mention him later again. But very interesting. This movie's from 2008. So I can also say that many of these movies they're not like so new, but they're not so old. They're basically from the first decade of this millennium, like from the 2000s. Well, this one is from 99. And that's just because I grew up with these, so these came to mind. There are many, many more movies, but these are quite famous. These are few, there's more. In this category, there's a little more of a love story, like Den eneste ene, that's a classic. Den eneste ene, yeah, I haven't personally watched it, or maybe it's a long time ago, but it's a sweet story. Elsker dig for evigt. I mean, just look at the title. It's definitely something you want to check out. En kort, en lang. That is an interesting story. Something you wouldn't expect. You wouldn't expect it in 2002 at least. I think that's when it came out. It has some interesting themes. Something about relationship dynamics and fidelity or infidelity and stuff like that. It's really interesting how it's put together. Italiensk for begyndere, I haven't seen myself, but everybody says it's pretty good. And it's just kind of like a nice movie. That's what people say about it. It's like very cozy and comforting. Italiensk for begyndere. Kærlighed ved første hik. Yeah, I remember this. This is a classic. This is really a classic. I have to translate because it's so funny. It means love at first hiccup. And hic is hiccup. So, første blik is first sight, and like love at first sight. So it's like a play on words. And that's kind of cool. It's from 99. It also has like 2 or 3 sequels. I'm not sure. They are less good, I would say. But the first one is pretty solid. It's about being young and exploring, everything with men or women. It's it's good stuff. It's classic and sweet and very simple. It's also based on a book. So I can definitely recommend that. Yeah. Så har vi Med Funes sidste sang, also supposed to be pretty good. Has like a nice vibe to it. It's from the late 90s as well. Med Funes sidste sang. Yeah, so do check it out. Idioterne. That's kind of offensive, right? That title. Idioterne. Well, it's from mid or late 90s, and it's one of these like dogma or dogma where there are certain rules in the filmmaking, so it looks a little more primitive, maybe something with you can't have artificial lightning and there are some other rules. I can't remember what those rules are, but it's interesting. Idioterne, there's some scenes that really stand out, so can check it out. Alle for en. Well, there's both Alle for en, Alle for to, Alle for tre. I think there's a 4th one coming out soon. Maybe they should really stop. But anyway, they're kind of funny. It's like a buddy comedy. It's 3 guys doing some stupid things. Of course, they have a plan, and then it kind of goes sideways as it's supposed to. It's pretty interesting. Alle for en. Now, some of these you might be able to find on Netflix or maybe not, but then there are other places. I'll put something in the description, in the video description afterwards, where you can really check it out. Yeah. Blå Mænd. That's also interesting. As far as I know, it was the director's first movie, so it feels very fresh in a way. It's from 2008 or 2009. Yeah, there's some surprising things in it, and it's a comedy. I would say most people can enjoy it. It's simple but interesting. Blå Mænd. Now, these movies are a little more serious, well, most of them are anyway, you could say. Festen, that is a classic from the late 90s. I think it's 97. It's a really good movie. I think it's Thomas Vinterberg who directed it. So I don't want to say too much, but it is not just a party. And fest means party, but it's a party that you don't want to be at. It's really interesting, very nice filmmaking. Then there's Druk, that's also Thomas Vinterberg. Maybe you know Druk because it's only, when is it from? It's from 2020. It came out in October 2020. Yeah. It's an interesting movie that examines drinking culture in Denmark. As you know, we like to drink a lot, especially when we're young. And that movie sort of explores this idea of drinking. I don't want to say too much, but there are some experiments happening. It's definitely something to check out for a few laughs, but also for a bit of reflecting and just to understand Danish culture a little better. Then there's Jagten. Now that is a dark movie, not scary dark, but just kind of dark side of humanity. It is kind of a gut punch, but it's very well made. You know, it's simple. The premise is very simple, but it's about people and feelings and situations. There's no fluff here. It's very, you know, to the bone. But it's good. Like, it's well made. It's not a feel good movie, but it is well made. That's for sure. Kongekabale. Yeah, Kongekabale is also pretty good. It's like political drama. Well, the journalist investigating something political. It's quite nice if you really have the patience to sit down, you know, and follow the plot and everything. If you're into the more brainy, cerebral stuff, Kongekabale is quite nice. So Nattevagten, I haven't seen that myself, but everybody says it's a classic. It's from '94. It's a gyser. It's a horror movie. Right? So I don't watch horror because I'm scared. I'll admit it. But if you're into horror, you can give it a shot. Nattevagten. It's a real classic. Bengen is supposedly also a very good movie. I think it's from 2000, maybe 2001. Yeah, it's basically about someone homeless, and it treats it very well. It's a very interesting movie. It got very good reviews when it came out. Then we have En Kongelig Affære. That is very good. So En Kongelig Affære is of course a royal affair, and when is it from? 2014, 15? Not sure. But it's about something that did happen in real life. So it's based on a true story. I mean, it's dramatized, of course, for effect. But it's pretty interesting about one of our kings, Christian VII. We have so many Christians. One of the Christians, yeah, who was kind of mentally unfit, and then a lot of things happen. You can check it out. Maybe it'll also make you curious about Danish history. En Kongelig Affære. Now I put one here that is old, but that's because it's such a classic and I have a soft spot for it, and that is Olsen-banden. Olsen-banden is not just one movie, it's a series. It lasted from, I think it was 68 to 81, and then there was like a break, and they made one in 98. But the first, I think, 13 movies, they're pretty good. Yeah, it's basically three guys. You know, they're criminals, but you know, the quirky kind, and they only steal from the rich people, the corrupt people, so you can't really hate them. It's kind of old. It's from the 70s mainly, so the language might be a little bit outdated, but it has something about our culture, so there's certainly some value, and nonetheless you'll understand some references, I think, that some Danish people might make, especially older Danish people. Olsen-banden, because banden means the gang. So yeah, check it out. And then we moved, alright, not so many here, because these are children's movies. Of course there are many more, but I generally stay away from cartoons, the traditional cartoons anyway. So here we have Far til Fire. Now Far til Fire, the original series, was in the 50s and 60s, mainly 50s. Basically a father of four, so there's a lot of kids, and then they go on all these adventures, and it's pretty nice. But I think you should probably watch the new one if you want to focus on learning Danish, which is why you're here. So the new one, the remakes, and I think they started around 2005 until today pretty much. There's maybe like 4 or 5 of those remakes. So yeah, it's good. It's like family friendly and very wholesome, and check it out. The same thing kind of goes for Min Søsters Børn. It's similar, like my sister's kids, just going on little adventures, very kid friendly, simple, not too complicated. You can try it. Again, there's the old one, and then there's the remakes. A lot of those. is Klatretøsen. Klatretøsen. I saw this when I was 11. Oh, it's been a while. That was an interesting movie. I mean, it's mostly for kids, teenagers maybe. With some teenagers, they have to pull off a little crime, but again, the way it's put up makes it seem like it's justified and okay. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. Again, it's for kids, so it's not like a deep movie. But yeah, you might be able to enjoy it. And Miracle, that came out around the same time, early 2000s. It has an interesting premise where the boy in the movie, he's like 12, I think, and this angel, essentially, guardian angel, he gives him the power to do anything, but if he swears, if he says any swear word, then he loses that power. So of course that's hard for a young boy. And then there's some other things too, but it's kind of interesting. Miracle. Then there's Terkel Knibe. Terkel Knibe is actually well, it's not a cartoon, but it's 3D animation, so I guess you can say it's a cartoon. It's from 2003, 4, one of those years. And it's a comedy by Anders Madsen, who's also in Sorte Kugler. He's a stand-up comedian. He's very famous if you're into Danish comedy. It's very important for the past 20-25 years. So yeah, Terkel Knibe, it's again pretty messed up. The humor is not really for kids. Teenagers, I guess, yeah, but not young kids. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's animation. It's kind of like showing South Park or Sausage Party to your 8-year-old daughter or son. Like, it's just a bad idea. But it's interesting. Terkel Knibe. Ternet Ninja 1 or Ternet Ninja 2, let's just take them together. They're similar to this because it's the same guy. I haven't seen them, but everybody says that they're really good. Like, they're from 2019, yeah, around that time. So they're actually the newest ones here. But I've heard many good things about them, so you can give them a shot. Okay, so now we're getting to TV shows. When I was making this list, I had to select some and then not select some others. And basically everything here is fiction. So, cooking shows, reality shows, documentaries, that type of stuff. Quizzes, it's not really here. I mean, I could put it, but I put fiction, so there's like a narrative and there's characters, that you can follow. So Rejseholdet, that was a big success. It actually won an Emmy, for best international drama or something like that. It's from 2001. It's pretty good. It's not my thing, but if you're into like crime stuff, especially a bit old-fashioned from the early 2000s, this is solid. It's very solid. Then there is Taxa. Yeah, Taxa is also pretty cool. It came before. It was a nice face they had, DR or DR. Yeah, it's about a taxi company or whatever you call it, a bureau, and that's really it. You follow their lives and blah blah blah, and that kind of stuff. It's nice. Of course, it feels dated. Some of the jokes and stereotypes and stuff they say. But the language is still, it's still like today. It hasn't been that long. Forbrydelsen, I didn't watch it, but that's just because it's not my thing. Many people love it. The crime or the killing. I think we translate it to the killing, even though forbrydelse means crime, like felony. It's very popular. The main character is a woman. I think it's Sophie Kroppel, who is, she's the one playing it. It's very popular. So if you're into, again, crime stuff, like many Danish people are, you can check it out. Forbrydelsen. Edderkoppen, I haven't watched it, and not so many people talk about it. But it seems like an okay show, Edderkoppen. It means the spider. I think it's more sort of in the mystery, like crime, but more mystery. And again, you can go to DRDK and check it out. And Lykke, yeah, that is that's cool. I think there's only 2 seasons, but it's fine. It's like this big company it's happening at, and there's these different people. I can't really say so much about it because the premise is nothing special, but it's a decent show. Bit of drama, bit of comedy. Yeah. When I write DR here, later on it'll be TV2 or TV2, because that's the place you can watch it, whether it's a streaming app or on TV. is because DR is free, as you know, because you pay your media tax. So anyone can watch that. You can just do it on your computer. But TV2 or TV2, you need to pay. I mean, if you have it on TV, then that's the same. So just know that. But DR is there for everyone to watch. And we have Krøniken. It's also supposed to be pretty good. I think they try to make something like Matador, which we'll get to in a second. Krøniken is generally considered to be pretty good. It's around 2004, 5, maybe 6. Yeah, that's when it came out, Krøniken. So it's back in the 50s. Yeah, I believe it starts back in the 50s and then maybe ends sometime in the 70s. There's like some time jumps. So again, a bit of history, a bit of Danish history. And it's not even that long ago. Krøniken. So more history, 1864. Yeah, so that's about a war. I believe it was with the Germans. That would make sense anyway. There's a lot of those. Yeah, so you can check that out. 1864. From what I heard, it's not so accurate. Like, it's not so historically accurate. But if you can forgive that and not care about that, then I guess you'll be okay. At least for learning Danish and, to have a little entertainment. You're good. 1864. Oh, I jumped a bit there. Matador. Matador is the classic, and like that is the one you've all heard of. It's considered to be the best Danish TV show ever, like by most standards, because it's well written. You got a good writer, a good director, good actors, good music. It's just everything came together, and from like 79 to 81. That's roughly when it came out, when it was airing. There's 24 episodes, so that's perfect for Christmas. And you can watch one episode a day until the 24th, or just watch it any other time. So Matador is definitely a classic, and yeah, it's about the time right before World War II. It's the early 30s maybe, and then right after World War II. And so yeah, it's a good show. It's a lot of good actors and good music. It's slow because it's old. I mean, it's over 40 years old. But yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy it. Herrens Veje. I haven't watched it, mainly because I'm usually not in Denmark and nobody talks about it. So Herrens Veje, it's something with more religious, dare I say, overtones. It's about a church or something. It looks okay, it's kind of heavy and kind of serious. But one of the actors, Lars Mikkelsen, he's like one of the main characters. He said that he actually became more religious after playing that role, like Christian. So it must be very powerful. Right? So you can give it a shot if you want. It's not the typical Danish TV show, but it might be worth it. Then you got Born or Borgen. It's also on Netflix. You might have seen it there. Could be a little bit heavy, because it's about politics, but it's not that complicated. It's not so procedural. It's more, their daily lives and the struggle for power and so on. It's pretty good. I haven't watched the latest season. There are 4 seasons. The first 2 are really good. The third one is also pretty solid. So Born, check it out. It's advanced though. I mean, the way they talk, some of the lingo, it's not exactly basic, but you can give it a shot. Then we got so here we are in TV2, In TV2 there's like Strisser på Samsø. That's another one. Samsø, that's an island, island. Yeah. So I think it's also from the late 90s. And again, it's more of this drama with the police and yada yada. So is Hvide Sande. Hvide Sande is also like that, but it's much newer. Like, I think there's still new episodes of Hvide Sande coming out. It's very popular because for some reason, Scandinavian people just love these crime shows. I don't. I think it's depressing as hell. But, some people are into it. This one we're gonna skip because I made a little mistake here. There's actually a movie. There's a show called Lærkevej, so let's forget this one for now. Forsvar looks pretty okay, so Forsvar means defense, and yeah, it's about some defense lawyers. So there's again some crime, but it's from a different perspective. some good actors as always. And what you'll notice is that if you watch Danish movies and TV shows, there's a lot of overlapping with the actors, because we don't have so many. I mean, you can't really watch 2 movies, definitely can't watch 3 without at least one of the actors overlapping. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. A lot of familiar faces. Badehotellet. Badehotellet is great, and there's a lot of seasons. Again, history. Takes place from, let's see, 1928 to sometime after World War II. And of course there's some jumps during the war. It's a very nice show. Good actors, very good production value. Each episode is about 40 minutes. There's only like 6 episodes per season, but there's 9 seasons. The 10th is coming out in a month. I think the final season is coming out in January. So Badehotel, I think it takes place at Badehotel, a hotel right by the beach, to bathe. Bathing hotel. Yeah, beach hotel. So it's really cool, it's good. Yeah, the language is a bit outdated. Well, it's not outdated in that sense, but of course they use expressions that are old. Like, we're more formal, we're more polite back then. Yeah, but it's a new show. It started in 2014 and it's still running. Very nice. Rita. Yeah, so Rita is good. You might have seen it on Netflix because it's there. I think no matter where in the world you are, Rita is there. So maybe you already watched it, but you can rewatch it, or you can watch it for the first time. It's a pretty good show. I didn't realize it existed before 2018, and it started in 2013. So I was like, oh yeah, many seasons. Yeah, it's nice, you know. The good thing about Rita is that it's very realistic. It's very like down to earth. The stuff they talk about, the things that happen. It's like, wow, I actually had that experience. I know someone who had that experience. It's not artificial. It's not like, I mean, many of these shows are good, but the way they talk is a little bit too dramatized or too self-serious or too whatever ridiculous. But Rita is like very down to earth, and there's drama and comedy and yeah, everything. It's a really good show, Rita. I would definitely say that. There's also some comedy, like pure comedy. You got Langt fra Las Vegas, and again, I have a soft spot here. Langt fra Las Vegas is nice. It's a sitcom. We don't have so many sitcoms in Denmark, sadly. But yeah, it is one. And personally, I think it's funny. Some people don't. The humor is a bit juvenile and corny and lowbrow, whatever it's called sometimes. But you can try it. It ran from 2001 to 2003. Maybe even better than Langt fra Las Vegas is Clown. Clown simply means clown, and there's a lot of the same people working on this. Clown is good because the way it's acted is in every scene they don't have all the lines. They just have like an end goal in the scene, how it has to end. But the lines themselves, they just improvise, which means that it's very, very natural Danish. It's not artificial. It's pretty much how we talk in real life. So yeah, Clown is very good for learning Danish, I would say. The next one, Shit Happens. Yeah, that is correct. That's what we call it. And I guess they spelled it with a J to get out of censorship, even though we don't really have censorship in Denmark. So yeah, this show, it's not really my thing, but some people find it funny. You know, it's kind of not sitcom in traditional sense, but yeah, it is funny. It's kind of cute and entertaining. Danish Dynamite. This is a sketch show, sort of. It's like you follow different characters in their lives, and they're all kind of weird and pathetic, and of course none of them are normal, and they take themselves too seriously. Danish Dynamite. It's something you can enjoy. I think it ran from 2013 to 16, something like that. So who knows? Maybe it'll be your thing. And there's Drengene fra Angora. It was very popular when it ran, 2003, 4, 5, around those years. It's also 3 guys. It's also a sketch show, you know, they just act. There's a bike team called Team Easy on, and you can Google that and you might have a laugh. And just some other characters. It's interesting. It's a bit dated maybe nowadays. But yeah, I think it still has some quality. It's solid. Tomgang. Tomgang is nice because it's pretty laid back. It's just about 3 guys who are, well, kind of losers, to be honest. And, you know, they don't know a whole lot about life or women or finances. They just kind of suck. But they're not bad people. They're just kind of living at a lower level, or what do you want to call it. A lot of mediocrity, I would say. But it's funny because of the way they talk, like the banter they have, or tomgang. And it's not too over the top. It's not like crazy. It's just like, you're kind of wrong, dude. That's not how it is, but okay. And so you kind of go with it and have some fun. Yeah, so here we basically have the Christmas stuff in julekalender. Jul på slottet, I think that's the oldest one here. It's from 86. I felt like I had to include it because it's such a beautiful title and some people really love it. So that's one. Nissebanden i Grønland. I hope we say i Grønland, because in the old days we said på Grønland. But, you know, they're independent, even though they're in the kingdom, so you're supposed to say i Grønland. That's for another day, I'll talk about that. But it's a classic, Nissebanden, the elf gang, Nisse. It's cute, and there's some nice songs. It's very, very wholesome and warm. Yeah, feeling very nostalgic now. Bamses julerejse, also quite a bit of nostalgia. I have to admit, it's from 96, around that time, I think. Bamse, he's a teddy bear, like, you know, he's a man in a costume. And he's kind of dumb. Now, I was a bit hesitant because he kind of speaks incorrectly on purpose, and I don't want you to do that. But as long as you also watch other things, it's fine. And it's a cute story. And it's, yeah, because it's made for little kids, I think like 5-6-year-olds. Krummernes Jul. I watched some of this when I was around 11. It's enjoyable. They also have regular movies, Krummerne. There's something with some elves and just all the typical Christmas stuff. So you can definitely watch that. Maybe it'll be your thing. Altidets Jul. Now this one is actually showing this year. Like it's a rerun because the original is from 94. I love Altidets Jul, and it's 3 sequels on the next slide. It's basically taking place in royal archives where the elves, they travel inside the books to learn about like, history of Christmas or history of Denmark or fairy tales and elves. It's very interesting. You learn a little bit of our history again. I don't take it as proper education, right, because it's dramatized. But it might make you curious. Altidets Jul is very enjoyable. It's old, it's from 94, but try it. It's showing this year on TV2 Play, and you can watch it. One new episode every day. Otherwise, just buy the DVDs. They're not so expensive nowadays. Altidets Nisse, that's a sequel. Don't need to get into too many details. Julemanding, that's Santa Claus. Altidets Eventyr, so 24 episodes in each. Very solid stuff, and the music is pretty good, most of them. Yeah, so who knows, you might love it. Brødrene Mortens Jul, that's also sweet, wholesome. Yeah, it's also TV2, late 90s, I think. It's good stuff. And has some nice music, a lot of snow and yada yada. Yeah, just solid Christmas show. Jul i Valhall came a bit later. It's 2005, so I was a bit too old for it when it came. But again, Valhall, it's you know, so we have all that Nordic mythology. We got Thor, Odin, Loke, Freya, Hel, Balder, and so on. So there's a little bit of mythology. Again, it's simplified. It's sometimes incorrect, but it's interesting. The kids are not good actors, but you don't really care, right? The 2 kids that are running around talking to the gods. Yeah, Jul i Valhall, and some okay music. Oh, there's a little spelling mistake. It's supposed to say Vesterbro. Okay, so Jul på Vesterbro is also a Christmas one, but it's for adults. So this is again Anders Madsen, right? Who made those other things. He's very talented, and in this one he plays all the characters. He's he's the father, the son, the social worker. Who else is and another? He's so many characters. It's very politically incorrect and it's offensive to some people, but it's fun, and there are some decent songs as well. Each episode is only 10 minutes. Yeah, 2003. That was a good year. That's when it came out. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. I'm starting with the rappers. First of all, because that's what I listen to, or used to listen to. And second, because that is where the meat is, the tofu if you want. And that is where you have a lot of long paragraphs, a lot of rhymes, wordplays. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna say a little bit about each, some more than others, and yeah, let's just see. So we got LOC, Liam O'Connor, that's his real name. LOC is good, it's solid. Came out around 2001, I think. Yeah, and I think he still makes music, but you know how it is with rappers. It's hard to stay relevant forever. But yeah, it's some good stuff. Lyrics are very, especially the first couple of albums. It's like a young dude, a young man. So some people might find it somewhat offensive. But then again, it is rap music, so you know what you're getting into. It's nothing unusual, but it's interesting, and the beats are pretty nice too, so that helps. Then we have Den Gale Pose og Yogon. So Den Gale Pose, that was the group that Yogon Jesperdal, that's his real name, was in. And this is a little bit older. It started in 95, I think. Yeah, so the rhymes are a little more simple, but yeah, it's nice. You can learn a lot here. I think he's very good at putting words together. Yogon, the main writer. So yeah, you should check that out. Then we have Johnson, or Mark Johnson, but he just calls himself Johnson. A bit of a bias here. I think he's great. Little story. His father was from Ghana, I think, and then he has a Danish mom, so he's like mixed, and that also sort of informs his lyrics and stuff. It's very interesting. He has some really far out lyrics. Of course, they're a little bit offensive, but they're more like ludicrous, like ridiculous. Just, what is this? What is he saying? But it's funny. I kind of take it as comedy because it's just it's so stupid, some of the things he says. So yeah, you can check it out. Then we got Uzo. Uzo is actually a friend of Johnson O, and so is LOC. They all come from Aarhus. Yeah, so he, what to say, a bit more party style, maybe less offensive. Kind of a smart ass. He can rap pretty fast, and sometimes he does. So yeah, check it out. Uzo. Oh, he has a $sign in his name. I just wrote it like a regular S. But most places it's gonna be $O, just so you know. Okay, så har vi Suspect. Suspect, yeah, that is, again, we're still in rap music, so it's still gonna be kind of offensive to some people. This is where they really use their imagination. It's very descriptive. It's the kind of stuff you would hear someone say when they're drunk or high or something. They also have more introspective songs, so it's a lot. I guess a lot of stuff to do with this. Suspect, yeah, it's a good name. Østkyst Hustlers, yeah, a little bit different. That is old school. Yeah, so Østkyst is of course East Coast, right? So that would imply they're from the eastern part of Denmark. Yeah, their songs are from the 90s, mainly from the 90s. And it's very simplistic, the flow and do. Like, it's not exactly very advanced, but it's nice, It has a kind of 90s vibe to it. And also it doesn't have so much swearing. I mean, of course a little bit, but less than the other rappers. So it's it's like more clean and easier to listen to for some people. Østkyst Hustlers. Alright, then we have Neon. And Neon, I think he's, what is his real name? Nils? Doesn't matter. Yeah, so he's not that special, but just kind of like young dude as he was when he put out his albums. Some decent tracks, kind of like how it is growing up and all this kind of stuff, acting all cool. Of course, they're overcompensating, but yeah, you can learn a lot from it, no doubt. So yeah. Alright, then we got Clemens. Now Clemens, he really has some interesting stuff. Some of his songs are just the usual showing off, claiming to be the best, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. But then he also has other songs about depression and infidelity. He has a song where he goes to Mars. I think it's called Party for Mars. It's a really stupid title. But yeah, you can check it out. Clemens. He made a lot of albums. He's very versatile, I would say. Alright, some more rappers. We got PLB. I can't really say so much about him. He's not like very famous or a big success, you could say. But he is technically mainstream. Some cool lyrics, nothing extraordinary, but it's nice. It's nice to listen to. Pervers. Yeah, so you can kind of see the joke here with his name. But I do think that his first name is Per. So, yeah, Pervers, he's very interesting with his lyrics. He doesn't do the usual, oh, I'm so tough, I'm a gangster, blah, 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 this kind of shit. He's a little more, like, he experiments and talks about his life and strange perspectives and stuff. So it can be quite interesting. I discovered him when was this? Almost 8 years ago. That was pretty late, actually. But he makes good stuff. There's no doubt about it. Okay, then we got Natasha, finally a female rapper. Now, sadly, she's not with us anymore. When was it she passed away? 2008, I think. So that's tragic. But she does have one solo album, and it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like reggae style, and the lyrics, they're a lot about being rebellious and keeping it real and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's good. Very nice flow. Big Stock Røgsystem. It's hard to say this because it's kind of nonsense, but it's like a temporary group and some rappers coming together for one, maybe two, I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe it was just one album back in 2005, but very entertaining and kind of funky. Also has that kind of reggae or dance hall vibe. So yeah. Mac the Coin. I think one of the members from Mac the Coin was also in Big Stock Røgsystem. Mac the Coin, they probably have some of the weirdest lyrics in Denmark. It's really strange. But yeah, you can listen to it. You get a different feel than you would with some of the other rappers. Nick J. Everybody knows Nick J. Well, maybe you don't because you're not Danish and they are not exactly in their prime anymore. But yeah, these guys, Niklas, what's his name? Yannick. They were so big, in my teenage years. So basically from 2002 to maybe 2008 or something like that. Yeah, they're really big. This is also rap, but it's like party rap, taking it and then making party songs. Kind of like, they look like they're in a boy band, but they rap. It's two guys. Check it out. It's very sentimental and cheesy, some of it, a lot of it, and a little bit self-serious. But yeah, try it out. You might like it. If nothing else, then at least it's very easy on the ears. It's like marshmallows, as my good friend used to say. Nick J. Alright. Gulddreng, and Golden Boy or Gold Boy. Yeah, he's not a rapper, but I put him here because he's kind of a smartass. At least he was for the year or two that he made music. His real name is Malte Ebert. I think that's his last name. Malte, yeah. So he made like a bunch of songs basically singing about how he's the best and blah blah blah. And again, the lyrics are so ridiculous that you can't really be mad. You're just like, this comedy is so far out. He references a lot of things, including models in his bed, drinking tons of champagne. You can just ask for him to give you money. He'll do it over mobile pay. It's so stupid. But it was hilarious back in 2016-17 when he was like the big thing. So you can check it out for a little comedy while you're learning Danish. Then we got Ida. And this is actually a girls group, well, duo. Two girls that made one album in 2008. It's not exactly a masterpiece, but yeah, you can learn Danish with it. And I would say the lyrics are pretty simple. It's entertaining, and it's kind of a more feminine touch because there are so many guys here in rap music. So it's nice with a little variation. Ida. And then we leave all that rap music. Here we got Burhan G. He is, I don't know if he still makes music. I'm a little bit out of touch since I'm not in Denmark at the moment, but yeah, he made a lot of stuff. His first two albums, they were in English, and then he switched to Danish. Yeah. It's just like very wholesome, easy to listen to. It's pleasant pop music. Yeah. Top Gun. Well, Top Gun, he's like, he kind of raps though. Sings, raps. And I'm pretty sure he uses autotune in all of his songs, so he's not like the biggest singer. But it's fairly easy to listen to, and you can get something out of it if you're into that kind of music. Rasmus Seebach, yeah, this guy is important in terms of popularity in Denmark, because I think he's one of the artists that sold the most. Now, don't quote me on that, I might be wrong, but he sold a lot of albums from, I guess, 2009 until, well, he's still popular, but especially those first 5 years, yeah, he was really the big thing. His father was also a singer or musician of some sort, Tommy Seebach, I think. Yeah, but Rasmus Seebach, just ask your Danish friends about this guy. They know who he is. Rasmus Nøhr, he's not as famous, not at all. But, it's like kind of, we call it kind of music. Kind of like a down-to-earth singer-songwriter, a little bit sensitive guy, so it has that vibe. You can check it out and judge for yourself. Okay, hvad er den næste? Okay, det her, det er Marie K. Yeah, I have to remember it's pronounced K. It's a little bit strange, but it is what it is. Marie K, she has this kind of image where, I don't know how to explain it, it's gonna sound insulting, but she's not trying to look like she's on top of everything. She kind of acts like I'm a mess, and I'm kind of a hopeless romantic. And again, judge for yourself, but check out her music. The lyrics are sort of abstract, a little bit vague. It's a lot of, not nostalgia was the word I'm looking for. It's very melancholic, that's what I was looking for. It has a certain vibe to it that's gonna help you digest it, so you're not just learning a language, but you're actually enjoying the music. So you can check her out, Marie K. Then we got Medina. Medina, she, I don't really think she probably makes music, but I haven't noticed anything. She was really popular for about 5-6 years, from 2008 or 9, and then next 5 years, I guess. She has very simple pop songs. They're easy to sing along to. I think they're good for learning Danish. Like, she's not so creative in her lyrics, but she does repeat herself a lot, so that's good for learning. And the beats are very simple. You don't have to think so much or to, brace yourself for something experimental, because it's not the melody and not the lyrics. It's very easy to listen to. Then we got Shirley, and Shirley, she actually used to sing for Den Gale Pose, that rap group from before. Yeah, so there's that. And she's not like a big champion of anything. I don't think anybody thinks that, at least. But she has some okay songs. You can listen to it. It's a pleasant voice. It's just kind of nice. So yeah, give it a shot. Okay, then these artists are kind of the funny ones. Some of them are direct comedy, but let's take a look. Johnny Deluxe. I remember when this came out. I think my dad, he was like, oh, what is this shit? But anyway, Johnny Deluxe, it's kind of like a pop rock band, like they play instruments, but the vibe is a little bit pop-like. Again, you can listen for yourself and then tell me what you think. Yeah, Johnny Deluxe. I think they made a song, something about Johnny, du er min elskovs pony. And then you can look that up for yourself. Johnny, du er min elskovs pony. That is not the title. I forgot. I think Elskovs Pony, that's the title of the song. Anyway, they're fine, simple, easy lyrics. You can listen to it and have a good time. Det brune punktum. Yeah, so the name itself is funny. There are actually 3 people. I think they only made 2 albums, if I'm not mistaken. They're all 3 actors. I mean, it's Peter Fordin, Hella Juf, and Martin Brygmann. I think, those were the people. So these songs are all satirical, like they were making fun of stuff. It often has kind of so-called dirty undertones or overtones, and there's a lot of irony and self-deprecation going on. So it's pretty funny. Maybe not the first thing you should listen to, but once you want to understand Danish culture a little bit, although their songs are like 20 or 30 years old, yeah, you can give it a shot and see what you think. Drengene fra Angora, yeah, this is just pure comedy. It was actually a sketch show that we had on TV like 20 years ago. It's not just music, they had like all these stupid ass characters. But then they made at least a handful of songs making fun of Denmark and just the world and themselves, and it's a lot of jokes and stuff like that. Drengene fra Angora. Before that, now we're going way back. This is like sometime in the 80s, and then, I don't know, until some point in the 90s. De Nattergale. Nattergale, that's the bird. Called nightingale? I'm not sure. But yeah. So De Nattergale, they also made a lot of songs that are kind of satirical. Like, you're supposed to enjoy the lyrics. Yeah, it's nice. So it's not all about the melody. It certainly is not. De Nattergale. They also made something called the Julekalender. Yeah, Danish and English mixed. Maybe I talked about that before. I'm not sure. Anyway, in that, they kind of mix Danish and English. So, yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe that's so good for learning. But their other stuff is all in Danish and is jysk, Jutlandic. So it has that touch. Okay, then we have Bamse og Kylling, like teddy bear and chicken. What is this? Yeah, so basically, this was a children's show. It's a TV show. And it was very popular from around 82. I think that's when it started, until it ended like 30 years later. It's amazing how long they could keep it going. So, it's something like this bear. He lives in the woods, and his best friend is a chicken. These people in costumes. Yeah, but it's fun. And they have some songs which are very simple. I mean, this is for like kids that are like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. So yeah, it's very simple stuff. There are some times where Bamse, he makes sentences that are grammatically incorrect, but it's kind of like a Danish kid would do. So it's not like, oh my god, it's bad Danish. It's more like speaking to kids so they can relate to him. You can check it out. Bamse og Kylling. Oh, the nostalgia. And then you have Pyrus. Now, Pyrus is not the name of an artist. It refers to these things that I talked about, these julekalender and these Christmas advents. Like there's 24 episodes, and then on the 24th you get the big climax. So anyway, Pyrus is just what we call it for short, because that's one of the characters. But yeah, how many? It's 4, right? Yeah, you can find 4 of these soundtracks. It's pretty sweet music. Some of it's very Christmassy. I know Christmas just ended because we're in January now, but some of it's more like, it's for kids mostly. So you could say, oh, it's educational, like it has a message, and the melodies, I would say a fair amount of them anyway, they're pretty good. Yeah, they're very comforting and stuff like that. Okay, so here we have, well, what's the common denominator here? Sort of like bands with a lot of longevity, or groups. Well, I mean single individuals. Shubidua. Oh yeah, Shubidua. They are not active anymore. He passed away, the lead singer, some 5 years ago, I'm not sure. And they were in the 70s and 80s, and maybe also the 90s a bit, one of the most important groups, because they would really sing about, hey, what's going on in society, and let's laugh at it. And so it's like reflecting. But the melodies are pretty simple. Sometimes they just took some, it's basically a cover, but then with new lyrics. I think there's some Elvis melody, and Killing Me Softly is also, yeah, Killing Me Softly. They say kylling og soft ice med pølser, sausages. So that's funny. Shubidua, they have a lot of good songs, and it really has a lot of satire without becoming like a parody of themselves. But they talk about life, the country, politicians a little bit. Yeah, it's cool. Bamses Venner. Now, I personally don't have much of a relationship with this band, but they were important. They played a lot of concerts until, again, the lead singer had to say adios to this planet. But yeah, it's like comfortable. It's not too extreme or anything. You can try it for yourself. Knacks, knacks. Yeah, a couple of songs. Of course, the most famous songs is Ville Kaniner. It's good stuff. What to say? Yeah, it's just like a regular rock, maybe slightly pop. Yeah, other people can define that band. Big in the 80s, as far as I remember, around that time. It's also nice. Now TV2, not the TV2 like the TV channel, but TV2 is a group, a band. I think they're still active. That's amazing after 40 years. Alright. Yeah, so they also had a lot of lyrics like talking about society and bringing up topics that maybe you wouldn't normally hear. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. It's not just like a melody and some blah blah words to fill out. No, it's really interesting. TV2. Then you have Tommy Sebak. Yeah, we had his son before, Rasmus Sebak. So Tommy Sebak, this was like back in the 70s and 80s, I believe. Yeah, he also has some classics, I believe, and it has an old sound. So if you're into that, you can check it out. Then we got Dodo and the Dodos. I have to admit, I don't know much about these, but it's just like, classic Danish band. That's all I gotta say. When you find it, you'll also find other groups. Danseorkestret. Oh yeah, this is just so 80s. What do they have? Well, they have a song called Kom tilbage til mig, among others. So it has that classic sound. Lyrics are very simple. Nothing philosophical, but it's good enough. It's pleasant, and it's like taking a time machine back. So yeah. This one is this is the last page. Thomas Helmig. Yeah, so Thomas Helmig, I guess he's still active. He started sometime back in the 80s as well, and he started by singing in Danish. Then at some point he switched to English. I don't know what happened, but he decided to do that. Anyway, he has at least a few classics, and it's just like pleasant pop music that you can learn Danish with. Søsfænger, all of these are like from way back, so again, 80s. Søsfænger, she has several songs, I believe, that are famous. I can mention Inderst Inde at the top of my head. That's a good song, and it's just like very pleasant pop music. Sanne Salomonsen. She's still around. I don't know if she's still making music though. She did perform the other day, didn't she? There was something. Yeah, so she used to be called Rock Mama, because is it rock music? I don't know, but she does have a certain attitude, and a lot of people like that about her. So yeah, you can check out her music. She's sort of important to Danish pop music in the past 40 years. Peter Belli. Yeah, that's probably the oldest music here. Peter Belli, I think he passed away last year, was it? Yeah. He had many songs. He started back in the 60s. That was a long time ago. And among other songs, he made Ulven Peter. Yeah, so think about that. Ulven Peter. And it's just like, again, taking a time machine, going back in time, and enjoying something that's rather old, I guess we can say. C.V. Jørgensen, I can't really say much about him, but he is quite famous, like maybe in my parents' generation, and one you should not overlook if you really want to look at history, like Danish history, when it comes to music. And then the last one is, of course, Gasoline or Kim Larsen. Gasoline was the group that Kim Larsen was in. Now, I hope you know who Kim Larsen is if you live in Denmark anyway, because he made the best-selling album of all time, Midt om Natten. It's a soundtrack to a movie called Midt om Natten, in the middle of the night. He's famous. He made a lot of classics, like Jutlandia, Smukke Unge Mennesker, there's Tarzan, Mamma Mia. There are so many classics. He was a very interesting man. The lyrics are sort of sometimes very simple, other times they're a little bit introspective. There's a lot of stuff here. So yes, this was the list, and there are many different things here. So like all the rappers and sort of the pop acts, then the bands, the children's music, and also like more traditional band structure and older music. So there's a lot of things that you can listen to. And I almost forgot to mention, because I didn't write it here, you might want to check out Disney songs in Danish, or DreamWorks if you're more into that. But, try to find it on Spotify or whatever you got going, or just watch the movies. Because if you already know the songs in your own language or English, you know where I'm going with this, I talked about it before. You can really help yourself that way, because you know the context and it's easier to remember the song when you actually like it. More of an emotional connection there. It's always good to watch some Disney or DreamWorks stuff. Or Ghibli, but I don't know, do they have a lot of songs in Ghibli movies? I'm not sure about that. Just give me a second. Gotta get some